Ngau mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui. I declare this meeting of Te Puna Kōrero open. Members are reminded that this meeting is being live streamed and to please use your microphones. I will invite members to recite the karakia. Whakataka tahau ki te uri. Whakataka tahau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta. Kia mā tātara ki tai. E hi ake ana te atakura. He tio, he hoka, he hauhu, tipei mauri ora. Kia ora. I have not received any apologies. However, I note that our kaumatua may have to leave early and understand that. So now we move on to item 3, public forum. We have 4 requests to speak. Just to make sure that each speaker has 5 minutes to speak, including questions, a bell will be rung at the 4-minute mark and again at the 5-minute mark. Members can ask questions of clarification only and cannot enter into debate with speakers. Speakers should take note of the restrictions and standing orders, including that matters which are subject to separate hearing processes must not be discussed, and that a speaker cannot speak on an issue that they have previously spoken about. Now, I have received the first 2 requests put me in a bit of a bind. So the first 2 are from, in order, Michelle Wachowski and Mari Wright. I've been informed just before the meeting that Mari is unable to speak. However, she has made the effort to come in. Her request is that the 5 minutes that would have been allotted to her is granted to Michelle Wachowski. The standing orders are quite clear about this. It is 5 minutes per speaker. If you are unable to speak, the standing orders should be enforced and that person not be allowed to speak. On this occasion, I will allow the 5 minutes of Mari to be granted, to be given to Michelle Wachowski, but note that for future reference, if you are unable to speak, the remedy for this matter will be that you would lose the opportunity. The public forum is an opportunity to hear from people. It is to hear from people, from individuals. There are 5 minutes for individuals, 10 minutes for organisations, depending on the matter of business. It is in my view that I do not want to create disorder by strictly enforcing the rules on this occasion. But I'm going to make it clear that for subsequent meetings, that the guidance that I'm giving right now is what should be followed in future. So, to move forward with this, I'm going to ask both that Michelle and Mari come to the table. I'm going to ask Michelle to speak for her 5 minutes. Actually, we'll consider it 10 minutes. The bell will ring at the 9-minute mark, is that correct? 9-minute mark, and then we'll complete at the 10-minute mark. Again, notwithstanding all the other elements of standing orders. Could Michelle and Mari please come forward? Ata Māori Kōrero, thank you for coming in. The timer will start when you start speaking. Michelle first.
Testing, right.
You may proceed.
Kia ora. As this is our last meeting, we would like to sincerely thank Councillor Kathleen Philo for her accessibility and commitment to the community and for always seeking accountability and transparency for council business. Thank you. Mari and I belong to a community group, Your Bay, Your Say, and have attended council and community liaison group meetings for 7 years, lasting longer than many staff at Wellington Water, including 5 compliance inspection officers for regional council. In June 22, we gave testimony for the reconsent at the Porirua treatment plant and put in place conditions to keep local authority accountable for illegal wastewater discharges. This includes the discharge pipe, which is 600 metres from popular Titahi Bay Beach and has a 2,000 fecal allowance compared with 40,000 that Water Services Authority Taumata Arawai has recently approved, 20,000 times more fecal allowance, and does not protect the environment or keep communities safe. At the hearing, the commissioners were not impressed that Council and Wellington Water officials had not advised them of a 2021 independent review showing significant issues with Wellington Water's poor contract performance and asset management. In 2024, Wellington Water and Veolia rewrote their own version of this review, but did not address the 2021 recommendations, which likely led to the Moa Point disaster this year. The new name for Wellington Water is Te Aki Wai, a collective asset debt model shaping up to be a financial shambles and has been a PR disaster. In 9 weeks, Te Āki Wai will start charging ratepayers a separate bill to service in part a $1.7 billion debt transferred from the 5 council owners, conveniently wiping Three Waters debts from their books, a debt that ratepayers didn't know about until the media raised it recently. Porirua Mayor Anita Baker has said Te Āki Wai could revise its program of work as a potential way to bring down charges. It's about prioritising what they do. Her leadership has been responsible for one of the largest debts transferred to Te Āki Wai, with likely higher rates for Porirua to service this debt. Under Mayor Baker's long leadership, including Chief Executive Wendy Walker, their legacy has been years of underfunding, accumulated deferring, poor oversight, and mismanagement of Three Waters infrastructure, influenced by their loyalty for Wellington Water Board Chair Nick Leggett, who oversaw contractors' overprice, which significantly cost ratepayers and exposed the organisation to risks of fraud and inefficiency, with some council shareholders calling for his resignation, which he ignored.
I'm going to ask you to stop for a second here.
The refund for ratepayers...
I'm going to ask you to stop for a moment here. The restrictions 15.2 on the standing orders make it clear that speakers in the public forum are not to criticise members or staff. I'm going to allow you to continue, but please excise any other comments in regards to that as I deem it to be. Please continue.
When the catastrophic Moa Point disaster occurred in February, Nick Leggett was quick to wipe his hands of it and his loyal base was silent. The refund for ratepayers from contractors who they say were overpaid and the public response to the reports is still today unknown, and there is still anger, frustration and deep distrust, and rightly so, given millions of dollars in hard-earned ratepayer money has lined the pockets of contractors, while our pipes have further deteriorated. At a Wellington Water Committee meeting on the 14th of March 2025, Mayor Baker announced that an amendment was passed during a Porirua Council meeting on the 13th of March that directed Wellington Water to undertake a full investigation into how much ratepayer money was overcharged by Wellington Water, and any recovered funds should be incorporated into future budgets to reduce costs for Porirua residents. Ratepayers are keen to know the outcome of this investigation, Mayor Baker, and keen to see you factor any overcharging as decrease in council billing. This is an official information request. Under the Mayor and CE's leadership, Porirua has continued to increase Three Waters debt, a $99 million retention tank on a seismic vault in the middle of Porirua City, budgeted for $47 million, with an additional $160,000 to rehouse native skinks. But information requests have not clarified the extra $51.8 million. Perhaps this large increase has been used to protect Wellington Water and cover overpaid contractors, systemic financial weaknesses, their cost estimation error and inadequate IT systems. Should not be Porirua ratepayers' job to pay for all this. Another large debt is the $4.5 million per year for carting and dumping bio-waste at Spicer Landfill. A decision to be more sustainable to invest in a thermal dryer was turned down under their leadership in 2017. Households are still struggling from 2024 when Council approved a 17.5 rates increase. Their long-term plan budgeted for 55% for Three Waters. Public expectation is that 55% will be the figure Porirua decreases their council bill, but a much lower figure has been mentioned. This billing is not equitable cost contribution. It's not based on sound data or logical maths, nor is the capital cost for Titahi Bay residents whose wastewater will not be stored in the retention tank, so why should they pay for it? Promises made to school children, planned upgrades, deferred maintenance for the Rukatani Point pump station, and the deferred resource consent for illegal overflows at this pump station, the lack of recording this illegal activity, the lack of notification of pollution from pumps and treatment plant, the legacy matters relating to transparency and engagement for joint assets owned by Wellington and Porirua councils, including responsibility for increasing the debt under your leadership, all conveniently removed. It seems that local authorities can manipulate and wipe clean whatever they like without notice, justification, accountability or transparency. Just 9 weeks until 1st of July when Te Aki Wai starts billing households, their indicative figures seem unaffordable and we are still in the dark on how much council will charge for their bill. Where is the transparency? In 2024, the Mayor was quoted under the rates rise when the rates rose by 17.5%. I know as a ratepayer of Porirua, I can't live there in 5 years. And she was recently quoted, water bills reaching nearly $7,000 a year in a decade would be horrendous and could drive people away from the region. Yes, Mayor Baker, if you say you can't afford it, then how can any of us afford it? Your legacy, Wendy and Anita, will be one of abject failure through massive debt and a licence to pollute. Please include this presentation in the minutes. Thank you.
I note that there is there time left in the 10 minutes? Did you want to read?
Jack.
If there's information in there that you've read that relates to the 2 times that I have mentioned to not criticise members or staff, then I cannot accept that in good conscience. However, not to I don't want to tie up any more time on this item. I know that Mari has information that she would want to present as well. Did you want Michelle to read that out on your behalf, Mari?
No, it's all right.
Okay. So you want 5 minutes for your speaking allotment?
Yes, that's.
We've just had it, thank you.
Is it so? It was within the 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, so we'll cover it within the 10. Michelle, Mari, please proceed ahead with your submission. Mari,
I'm waiting on a hospital appointment.
I understand. Okay. In which case, if you're choosing not to speak on this occasion, then I will then open up to councillors for questions of clarification. Councillor Philo.
Just a question about, I'm wondering what, or if you have anything to share about your plans now that, you can't attend any of the joint committee meetings or, what is there any updates?
Am I allowed to answer the question?
That's a question of clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Philo. Yes, what we've been doing the last year is we approached Welltech and Whitirea, and a cohort of students started building an app. And what we've been doing the last year we got a grant from Microsoft, and it's under their social impact program. We got $2,000 and we've been recording data, and all this data is through the public health sector. And what we're doing is for locations around Porirua, we're getting people to put in their water activity, and then that data goes into the app. And now we've got the second cohort of students coming through from Whitirea and Welltech, and they're broadening that and putting it around the Wellington area. And we'll be collecting some more data, hopefully getting some more funding from Microsoft again for another year. And we're probably going to have a chat to Ngāti Toa about it because they're doing some great work in the harbour. But all the staff is fantastic, particularly with pools.
Mrs. Wachowski, I'm going to stop there. Your time has ended on that item. I've now noted there's 10 minutes. You're free to leave now. Thank you for your submission. Appreciate your time coming in to speak. Thank you, Mari. Before we move on to the next 2 speeches, I thought it may be an opportunity to whakanoa just a moment here. Obviously, my interpretation of how we resolve these issues is to allow people to speak. The standing orders are there for a reason. As the chair, it is my interpretation of them. I would rather allow people to speak, but when it clearly crosses a line, I am compelled to act. So that is my interpretation on this matter. Let us move, therefore, to Steve O'Rourke, and I understand Elena Higginson is going to come up and speak immediately afterwards. It's on a related matter as well. So I'll ask them both to come to the table to speak. As I said before, each speaker has 5 minutes to speak. The bell will ring at the 4-minute mark and again at the 5-minute mark when time's finished.
Morena koutou. I'm going to go first. Is that okay?
That is fine.
Tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, I'm Elena Higginson. I whakapapa to the far north, but born and bred here in Porirua. I'm wearing two pōtai today. I'm the General Manager of Iwi Business Services at Turunanga o tō Rangatira, and I'm also the owner of Tira Maroa, a small consulting business with big ambitions. I'm speaking to item 7.2, your LTP strategic direction and planning assumptions. The work outlined in this paper is really good, but I want to shine a light this morning on what I believe is missing. I'll do so firstly by sharing with you two kaupapa happening right here in Porirua right now. About a month ago, BizHub Porirua opened its new whare. It was lovely to see some councillors there celebrating this occasion with us. We operate now 5 days a week and we average 40 business owners through the door every fortnight. Māori, Pacifica, trades, creators, professionals, people ready to grow their businesses here in Porirua. BizHub isn't just networking over kai, it's economic infrastructure. We focus on growing connections, developing capability and resilience, and encouraging creativity. Through BizHub, we launched Takitini, an iwi-led procurement hub. Takitini provides three things: a warrant of readiness framework that verifies that businesses meet buyer requirements, managed shared services that removes administrative burden for businesses, and structured access to procurement opportunities with capability support to help businesses become more confident and successful when tendering. Why does this matter? Because growing businesses creates jobs, entry-level jobs for rangatahi, apprenticeships into trades, skilled jobs that keep people here at home in Porirua instead of flying off to Australia. Businesses that can scale, they employ more people and they build wealth in our community and put food on the table for whānau. Your own economic development team has been an awesome and genuine partner in this mahi with us. But this collaboration is working because the right people are in the room. What I'm asking for you is to have a look at locking this intention into your strategic framework so economic development becomes a deliberate, funded strategic priority, not something that happens when the stars align. Right now, thriving local businesses sits as a community outcome under our home. That's the right instinct, but an outcome without a strategic priority to drive it is like a destination without a road towards it. Strengthening economic resilience, ensuring Porirua is a place to do business is not separate from your other strategic priorities. It is an enabler for them all. When local businesses thrive, households are more resilient, communities are stronger, rangatahi have pathways, and we have more resources available to chiaki our tai ao. This should be a strategic priority because it makes everything else possible. I'm asking you to consider adding a fifth strategic priority before you finalise your LTP framework. It might read something like this. I'm not a word genius, so you might have to wordsmith it. Grow a resilient local economy, support Porirua businesses and workers to thrive, retain value in our community, and build economic rangatiratanga for whānau. It doesn't require new spending, not yet anyway. It requires naming this as a deliberate commitment that guides how existing investment works for Porirua businesses. They say it takes a village to raise a child. Ai marika, we all know that this is true. It's also true for starting and running a business, and believe me, it's very hard at the moment. It takes a village. Ko te mahi o te takitini tēnei. Soon you're about to hear from my friend Steve O'Rourke from Te Arahiranga, who will demonstrate how a strategic commitment focused on economic resilience and retaining value locally can translate into measurable economic and social impact. Nō reira, tēnā koutou.
Before I go to Steve, can I just check, are there any questions of clarification from councillors? Councillor Trillin.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation. Do you mind just repeating the particular wording that you'd proposed, maybe just marginally slower?
Significantly.
Noting that this will be in posterity thanks to the powers of YouTube.
Yes, thank you. Just want to make sure I've got it right.
No, kei te pai. Grow a resilient local economy, support Porirua businesses and workers to thrive, retain value in our community, and build economic rangatiratanga for whānau.
Retain value for community and economic rangatiratanga. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Any other questions? Any other pātai? Before I move on to Steve, Eleanor, thank you very much for coming in today and speaking mō tērā tāke. We'll restart the clock for Steve-o. Thank you for coming in, Steve-o.
Thank you.
You can start
Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Steve O'Rourke, here representing Te Arahiranga. We focus on improving procurement outcomes, not just in delivery, but in what that spend achieves for communities and local economies. We've recently worked with Auckland Transport, where we measured the social and economic return of procurement decisions. That work contributed to Auckland Transport being named a finalist in the World Procurement Awards 2026 in the social impact category. Our work with Wellington NZ has had an influence on the Regional Economic Development Plan. And what that work confirms is simple. Procurement is one of the most powerful levers that councils have to shape local economic outcomes. As you develop your long-term plan, there is a clear opportunity in front of Porirua City Council. How do you ensure that more of your investment strengthens your own local business community? Council investment will happen regardless. The question is where the value lands. Without intentional settings, much of that value flows out of the local economy. But when procurement is designed with purpose, the outcomes are very different. We are seeing around $4.60 returned to the local economy for every dollar spent locally, along with measurable uplift in GDP of $1.13. That means more local jobs, stronger small business participation, and more resilient supply chains. This is not about spending more. This is about making existing spend work harder for Porirua. From our experience, 3 things make the biggest difference. First, visibility. When businesses can see a clear pipeline of work, they prepare, invest, and partner earlier. Second, procurement settings. Many local businesses are capable but locked out by contract size, timing, and complexity. Packaging work differently and allowing space for local participation can significantly change that. And third, measurement. If supporting local businesses is a priority, it needs to be tracked through local spend, SME participation, and employment outcomes. So, as you shape your long-term plan, our ask is straightforward. That Porirua City Council builds on its focus on thriving local businesses by using procurement to strengthen a more sustainable and resilient local economy. Supported by a visible pipeline of work, procurement practices that enable participation and consistent measurement of outcomes. This ultimately comes down to a choice. Council investment will deliver projects either way. Done well, procurement does not just deliver infrastructure. It builds local capability, supports businesses, and creates long-term resilience within the community. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you very much, Steve. Are there questions for clarification? Councillor, we're happy, and then I'll have Councillor Lawler.
Thank you. I'm sorry, going back $4.60, so I missed it, from
every dollar spent locally, yeah, and that's because of an amplifying effect. That dollar that's spent locally gets spent 3 or 4 times.
Any other questions, Councillor? Are we happy? No, thank you. Councillor Lawler.
Kia ora. I'm mulling over the scale issue because that's what obviously you will hear, that in order to do some of our jobs we need contractors who can operate at scale. So I'm just wondering how, in your experience, the settings have been in place to make sure that those bigger contractors are umbrellaing smaller local people. Is that the model, or how does it typically work?
So consortium is a new approach as well. Your local people may be getting hired, but obviously at lower rates when Tier 1s hire them. That money, the profit, doesn't stay within the country. It'll go to Australia, or in the case of Water, France. But there's lots of approaches. And also tabled that Wellington NZ have done a report, Project Uwake, which covers a lot of this. It's a useful resource.
Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Filo.
Just a quick one. You said GDP. What was that stat, sorry?
So $1.13 of GDP uplift, which actually aligns with the new government procurement rule 8, which asks for a 10% economic uplift. Just by hiring local, you'll more than achieve that number. So that's $1.13 every in a regional basis.
And just quickly, and this is probably for both of you, just wondering around any work that you've been doing with like operations and staff. Is that happening
Yeah, absolutely. The collaboration on the ground is awesome. The economic development team, the Māori team, basically the whole community partnerships team is doing awesome work alongside Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira and some of our other economic development partners in Wellington.
Sorry, just a sup.
I'll allow it, but did you want Steve to answer your previous question because you said it was to both?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we've also met with the local strategic leadership development group who met with the Infrastructure Commission last week, and that talks to the forward pipeline of work. So councils need to provide that forward pipeline of work to enable people to make business decisions so that they can hire people, know that work's coming down the pipeline that they could be capable of winning.
One last question.
My sup, thank you. So if I've understood it right, work is happening on the ground, and this is really just to get it at that higher level to enable that work at a governance.
Pretty much that's what I was trying to say, is at the moment it's because of the right people and the relationships, which is always really important, why some really great things are happening. But I don't want it to be about stars aligning or the right person in the right role. If we have a strategic priority that focuses on economic resilience and growing local business participation and growth, then ideally this is something that we'll focus on for the next decade and more.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, Steve, for coming in. Elena, thank you. Kia kōrero motua o te take. That will finish up our public forum. We will now move to item 4, conflict of interest. I call for any conflicts of interest that need to be clarified. There are none. Notification of extraordinary business, that's item 5. There are no items of extraordinary business. We're going to move to item 6. We are asked to confirm the minutes of Te Puna Kōrero held on Thursday, 19th of March 2026. I move that we confirm the minutes as a true and accurate record. Do I have a seconder? Yes, Councillor Trillin. I now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Abstentions? Carried. Item 7. Now, I'm going to move the motion for the item on notice. Do I have a seconder? Oh, I'll allow Councillor Duncan. He got in just at the pip of time there. As part of this item, we will be joined at the table by Councillor Tony Randall from Wellington City Council. Kia ora, Tony. As they are part owners of the Spicer Landfill, Wellington City Council have an interest in its future. I move that we suspend Standing Order 16.3 for the duration of item 7.1 in order for Councillor Tony Randall to ask questions of submitters at my discretion. Do I have a seconder? Got Mayor Baker, just sorry there, Councillor. I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions, that is carried. We'll tidy that little piece up there, Tony, well done. Members, and I'll include you here and Tony in this regard, may ask questions of clarification to submitters, but cannot engage in debate. No questions to officers during hearings, as these will be addressed during the deliberations. A note of any questions will be made. Submitters, please come to the table when I call your name. You will have either 5 or 10 minutes to speak. This includes time for questions. A bell will be rung when you have 1 minute left in your time, and again when your time is up. We will start with Ella Jaspers from Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira. You have 10 minutes. Please come to the table so you can speak. Before you start, just again, some general advice. First of all, please take your written submission as read. We don't need to hear it all again here. But if you do want to highlight a specific point or add detail not in the submission, you can. Please stay on topic. And obviously, councillors will be able to ask questions of clarification, but there is not allowed to be a debate, as I mentioned before. And please stay within the time. When you are ready, please begin.
Morena koutou, thank you for the opportunity to speak to our feedback on the options for the future of Spicer Landfill today. Ko Jada tōku ingoa, he uri ahau o Ngāti Tō Rangatira, and I work at Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira as a resource management advisor.
Morena tātou, ko Ella Jaspers tōku ingoa, he kaimahi ahau no Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira.
We're here to represent Te Runanga o Tō Rangatira, which is the mandated iwi authority for Ngāti Tō Rangatira. and we made a submission on the 25th of March 2026 stating that our preferred option for the future of Spicer Landfill is option D, to close Spicer Landfill with no replacement service, as this would provide the best long-term cultural and environmental outcomes. Over the past several years, Te Rūnanga have been working alongside Porirua City Council to identify the best alternatives for Spicer Landfill due to its ongoing cultural and environmental impacts, specifically on rangituhi maunga and the surrounding awa and mahinga kai. The operation of Spicer Landfill has been impacting the mauri of the maunga due to removal of native vegetation, reclamation of streams, as well as ongoing leachate and odour issues. Therefore, closure of the landfill will prevent any further waste disposal at Rangituhi and enable remaining environmental effects on the maunga and surrounding waterways to be actively managed and restored over time. This option would support uria of Ngāti Tō Rangatira to re-establish and strengthen their relationship with their tipuna maunga through kaitiakitanga and remediation of the site, involving planting, enhancement of water quality and mahinga kai. This option aligns the most with the values of Ngāti Tō Rangatira and our kaitiakitanga responsibilities to protect and sustain Te Taio for future generations.
Te Rūnanga acknowledges that option A, to close Spicer Landfill and provide a public refuse transfer station, would support the ongoing need for waste services within Porirua. Options A, B and C would all involve the closure of Spicer Landfill, but would continue waste-related activities in the site, including refuse transfer facilities and cleanfill disposal. Of these three options, option A would result in the least adverse effects on Te Taio. Option B and C do not uphold the environmental and cultural values of Ngāti Tō Rangatira. While these options would involve transferring refuse outside of Porirua, they would require a larger physical footprint at the Spicer Landfill to accommodate transfer activities, including heavy commercial vehicle movements and the disposal of clean fill. This would allow for the continued disposal of waste on our tipuna maunga, resulting in ongoing environmental impacts, and would prevent full remediation of the site. As such, options B and C are inconsistent with the cultural values of Ngāti Tō Rangatira and our kaitiakitanga responsibilities. In contrast, both options D and option A would support a shift in focus towards waste minimisation, alongside stronger implementation of regional waste approaches and solutions. In closing, Te Rūnanga Tō Rangatira strongly supports option D as the option that best upholds cultural values and kaitiakitanga responsibilities. Te Rūnanga Tō Rangatira encourages Porirua City Council to prioritise options A and option D, as these options prevent further harm to rangituhi and enable the long-term restoration of the maunga, surrounding whenua and waterways. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to our submission, and we are happy to answer any questions regarding our submission.
Kia ora kōrero. Councillor Lawler.
Kia ora, thank you for your submissions. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at other submissions, but there are some that suggest an option where Porirua applies for an extended consent to 2035 to enable investigation of options that have a better environmental impact, that enable us to innovate around what might be possible in terms of waste diversion and sustainability. Does the Rūnanga have a view on that?
I haven't unfortunately had a chance to read other submissions in depth, but we'd definitely be open to that. However, our long-term goal is to close Spicer Landfill on Rangituhi. But as long as we continue this discussion in partnership, we wouldn't be opposed to the idea for a perhaps 5-year extension of the consent.
Any other questions, Councillor Lawler? Any other pātai? Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. Thank you for tō whakaaro mō tēnei take. Kia ora.
Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi. Let us move on to Mayor and Peace. Thank you very much for coming in. Again, please consider your submission as read. If there are questions, as has been stated before, officers will address those during the deliberations, which is a subsequent meeting. However, I will take on board any questions that you might have and will endeavour for officers to respond back to you separate from that item. With that, please begin.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much. I'm Merrin Pearce. I'm a sustainability consultant based in Wellington, but have been involved in sustainability work across Asia Pacific with waste management and package reduction. Thanks for the chance to present. And thanks for responding to the questions in my submission. That was really appreciated, and it shows that they're being read and considered. That's not common around the world. As a sustainability consultant, I know that getting feedback from stakeholders is vital, and it is important to keep those stakeholders updated as the project progresses and decisions are made. My presentation today is more about dreaming bigger and better than looking at the landfill as a relocation exercise. I think there are a number of options to help create a world, or at least a New Zealand leading residual waste service. My presentation today builds off my submission and the point where it seems to be an assumption that carbon emissions will be increased by closing the landfill or even the operation. But are we really looking at the electrification of vehicles and other alternatives to reduce emissions and using maybe the landfill gas coming off Spicer at the moment? Your assessment framework that you worked to had 3 objectives, and the third one was to manage environmental impacts and minimise emissions. And I don't think that's being really considered in the business case being put forward to date. We have a couple of important years ahead now. Technology is moving fast, and we all know the problem with overseas fuel. So why not be generating electricity or energy from our landfill? Even if we go with the furthest landfill proposed of Bonnie Glen near Martin, it's only 155 kilometres away. Modern electric long-haul trucks can travel 500 kilometres. So on a straight, flat road that we all know, 310 kilometres round trip with extra kilometres in the tank of electricity shouldn't be too bad. So Wellington City Council, their partner at Landfill, is already, I believe, operating, and Porirua City Council has tried here, but maybe it's time to look at how we can use that gassed electricity on site and be powering energy. And so LMS Energy at the Southern Landfill has got the experience. They're operating with a member of your team. Let's look at that biogas to help reduce running costs, downtime for maintenance, and also quieter and healthier operating environment for staff and nearby users. Electric excavators are currently one of the ways of leading zero emission construction waste or transportation of waste at transfer stations or class 2 or 3 landfills. It's a shame to see that, unfortunately, the new C&D facility on Broken Hill Road doesn't seem to have gone with electrified loaders in that compact area in amongst our semi-industrial side. However, it's great that Lower Hutt's Silverstream landfill is using electric vehicles, and particularly loaders, on site and providing charging for other vehicles. So my question is, in my submission, these carbon emissions and requirements of emissions reductions can be done better and should be considered better in the further alternatives as we look 4 years out. Lastly, don't overlook the material recovery facilities. These could be better implemented in other options of how we drop things off. Currently, when we go to the pit, basically once you're inside the gate, there's no option to separate things. Let's do some better manual sorting to reduce the volume of waste and reduce our carbon reduction on site and wherever we put our rubbish in someone else's community. Thanks for the time, and I'm happy to take questions because I know we're all contributing to Porirua's landfill at the moment.
Kia ora. Questions from councillors? Councillor Lawler, then I'll go from Trillon.
It seems to me that one of our challenges is that a lot of the parts of our waste system are contracted out to private contractors, so then it becomes up to them whether they choose to electrify or not electrify, etc.
Correct.
And also, you need capital to kind of fund innovation. Like if we want to think big, then we have to explore, we have to try things, we have to look overseas. We don't have that kind of funding. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about where this has been done well and how it might be supported financially.
Well, the good thing about contracting out is you create the contract and set the terms and conditions. And so in that space, you can put in, we will give a higher consideration under operating costs and ranking of operators that do show that they can do electrification. I don't think we have to go far to find out that waste management companies are already using electrified trucks. I'm not sure of all of the range here, but Waste Management New Zealand currently does. I'm not familiar here of that. Don't think it's a beyond us. There's technology now. Just look at Electrify New Zealand's website for showing them how trucks are being used and transporting things. I think we've got all the pieces here. We just need the clear policy at the front. Sorry for a bit long.
We have gone over time, Councillor Trillan. Did you want to...
Councillor Lawler covered the essence of my question, so I'm fine to withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your understanding. Thank you very much for coming in.
All right, and I'm happy to be contacted later if any follow-up questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marion. Let's move now to Fraser Clark from Wellington Water. You will have 10 minutes to speak. Please come forward. And when you are ready, please begin.
Morena, Fraser Clark, tōku wangua. I'm Fraser Clark, Head of Sustainability and Resilience at Wellington Water. I'll just
Kia ora rā, I'm Leslie Smith. I'm in Fraser's team at Wellington Water.
I've brought Leslie with me because in a previous role at Water New Zealand, led the development of the New Zealand guidelines for biosolids management. So really here a focus on one particular waste stream, or what's currently a waste stream, and the sort of interconnectedness between the operation of the landfill and the operation of the wastewater treatment plant. As you'll all know, because I think you've all been out there and seen it, and you're talking about it later today, all of the wastewater from Porirua and the northern suburbs of Wellington flows to and is treated at the Porirua wastewater treatment plant. The biosolids that are produced in that process are a necessary product of that process. And it's a process, as we've sadly seen at Moa Point, a process you can't stop or turn off. So that stream is going to continue to need to be managed. In the long term, it's an objective from our side that we realise energy and nutrient value of that biosolids material, but that's a long-term game, requires think about technology, about markets, about products. So at the moment, landfilling is the only option available to us for that product or that material in the near term. Managing that then, there is intentions to intention is to put in a dryer to reduce that material in volume and to make it potentially available for further treatment or reuse, but that's going to require now Te Ake Wai making that investment and completing it within time for that to be in operation. At the moment, if the landfill closes at 2030, needs to be done before then. There's a high risk that that won't be able to be achieved. And if that isn't achieved, we'll need somewhere for that material to go in the interim, and that's why in our submission we've recommended that you seek an extension to the landfill operation to enable that to occur and to enable the wastewater and that process to continue to operate until that alternative is in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks very much for this. I was shocked when I saw that dryer potentially won't be ready at the time, and I liked your idea of the extra 5 years. Would it take another 5 years, or would 1 year? Could we encourage regional council to accept it if we went for 1 or 2 years?
I guess that's a discussion on the resource consent and how you might proceed with that, what conditions you might look to obtain. So the reason that time frame, I guess back in for the 2024 LTP, there was discussion about including that project in your LTP, but it wasn't able to be included within your funding envelope. So that now is a discussion, consideration for Te Ake Wai to consider how that project fits within that funding envelope and the timeliness there. We do have, so it's going to, we have some experience now from the Seaview dryer, which is a effectively similar technology doing a similar process about what time that will take. So I can't really say, it's all subject to investment, subject to design, subject to construction. Would think within 5, but until that's all clear, wouldn't be able to say.
Councillor Lawler, okay. Councillor Randall.
Yes, just in terms of potential interim solutions, have you got any particular thoughts about what would be used and whether or not that might include the Wellington sludge plant? But also, what volume are we really talking about if there is no other way, if access to spices is stopped before the drying plant's in place?
Yeah. I think that the challenge with the current material in its undried form is that no one really wants to take it. It's unstable. It's got odour challenges, so it's not able to go to Southern Landfill. It's not able to go to Silverstream. There's discussions about Bonnie Glen. I think there's been wavering there about whether they take it or not. I think the gentleman just mentioned, it's a 300k round trip. I forget, do you remember the number of trucks per day we're talking about, Leslie? I can't remember the number, but it's multiple trucks per day. SMF plant would be, I guess that would take a lot of thinking, because you'd have to, different material to the Western material that's going there, receiving it, transport volumes. That would have to be something that would have to be work through and seeing what those options are and what it means. But that would be something we'd have to, I guess, consider as we look at what the alternatives are if this option goes away. And all of that also adds cost and transport, etc., etc.
Yeah, and the disruption, those trucks aren't necessarily most pleasant things to have go through.
Not welcome through most suburbs, no.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for coming forward and speaking on this matter. Kia ora koutou. Kia ora kōrero, done there. Next up is Jaden Quinn. Is Jaden here? Okay, Jaden is not here. So we'll move on to the next submitter, Rachel Allen. Kia ora, Rachel. Please come forward. You have 5 minutes.
Is that on? Oh, yep. Kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rachel Allen. I live in Tawa, approximately 350 metres from the Spicer landfill boundary. I think this is probably the only landfill in New Zealand that's that close to houses. And just for clarity, because it's often asked, my house was built before the landfill, as were many of the houses in Tawa. So it will come as no surprise to many of you that I strongly support option D, full closure of Spicer landfill with no resource transfer station or a clean fill facility. One of the themes I want to focus on is that the reason the council has given for not continuing the landfill operations are the exact same reasons why a resource transfer station or clean fill facility should not be located at Spicer. The same issues apply. If the site is no longer appropriate for a landfill due to odour, environmental risk, cultural impacts and long-term impacts on the community, then it is also not appropriate for other waste infrastructure. Firstly, odour. Resource transfer stations generate odour. In some cases, they can be worse than landfills because the waste is not buried immediately. It sits, sometimes for extended periods. In your consultation documents, we have not been told how often waste will be removed, whether it will remain on site overnight, or whether the facility will be fully enclosed. And real life does not follow best case scenarios. We've already seen disruption at Spicer previously due to weather and operational issues. On top of that, Council has acknowledged the role of katabatic winds that carry odour directly from the landfill into Tawa. Those winds are not going to go away. Secondly, the fault line. Council has indicated the Oharu fault line is a key reason not to continue landfill operations. So it is difficult to understand why that same risk is considered appropriate for a refuse transfer station. This is an active fault zone capable of significant earthquakes, and the risk extends beyond the exact fault line. If the risk is too great for one form of waste infrastructure, it is too great for others. Cultural impacts. Council has advised that local iwi, Ngāti Toa, wish to see the landfill closed. However, no information was provided in the consultation documents on their views on a refuse transfer station. Obviously, I've now seen that their submissions are that they do prefer option D, full closure. It would help community to have known that in advance. Fourth, the environment. Is clean fill really clean? My understanding is that in the existing landfill, earthworks and inert material are buried in lined cells, but that the proposed clean fill site would be unlined. Council has already confirmed that earthworks and inert material have been buried before, prior to it being identified as being contaminated. What risk would this pose to the environment in the future if this happened? What contaminants would be released, and what effect would these have on land, waterways, wildlife and humans? I'd also like to mention the lack of information in the consultation documents. We have not been told expected truck movements. I imagine it will increase compared to current operations. We're not told how this site will operate on a day-to-day basis, or even what proposed duration of consent you'll be applying for. Without this information, it's hard to assess the impacts. Finally, alternatives. Your alternatives report suggested that large facilities need a significant amount of land, but a refuse transfer station requires much less. This indicates that there may be other viable sites away from residential areas, and it is deeply disappointing that this has not been properly explored, especially given that the community has been raising concerns about this location for over a decade. If you need extensive controls to manage odour, noise, dust and environmental risk, then you are building in the wrong place. So for these reasons, I strongly support option D. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Any questions from councillors? There are none. Rachel, thank you very much for coming in. Councillors, I'm going to take a moment for us to have 5 minutes to just have a recess, to break. Anyone needs to go to the loo, anyone needs to wet their whistle, please do that. We will reconvene back here at 9:27. Okay, order. So let us continue with our submitters on item 7.1. We are next. Order. I'm going to have everybody just quieten down so we can actually have our submitters be heard and give them the due respect that they deserve. So can I please have Lewis over end here, please, to speak? Lewis, you have 5 minutes. Kia ora.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here. My name's Lewis Overend. I was born in Wellington and lived in McKelvey Place in Tawa, just over the hill from the Spicer landfill, and lived there for 18 years. I bought my first house in Waitangirua and then in Elsdon, and now live in Judgeford in Porirua. We run a small contracting company, local contracting company, based in Porirua and work around the Wellington region. In my submission, I made a couple of points about the plan to close the Spicer landfill, mainly that I disagree with the idea as a whole. Closing the landfill is only going to drive up costs for the general public, with the rubbish now being required to be carted to Wellington City Council or Silverstream, I presume. This cost will either be in the form of rates or the cost of construction, with construction waste having to be carted to those places. Contractors like myself having to increase costs further to cart materials and waste from local sites in Porirua to a further distance to those other landfills. I can understand that the smell is a concern, but the landfill was created circa 1976, prior to most of the buildings and subdivisions being established in the surrounding area. Surely when one moves into an area, they should do their own due diligence and recognise that the landfill is in the area. My point being, why close the landfill down because of the smell when everyone is aware that it exists in the first place? Call me old-fashioned, but I was also surprised that PCC is willingly closing down a profit-making asset. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was in the circa of $1 million profit per year. The sole reason being that Porirua City Council cannot obtain a resource consent from itself. Is that a little back to front, I would presume. I'm not sure how many profit-making assets Porirua City Council has, but I'm sure there aren't a huge amount. So not only are we making rubbish removal more expensive, we are removing profit-making assets from the region. To me, this is a disservice to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lewis. Are there any questions? I do have one, but I'll let Councillor Lawler go first.
Kia ora, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm trying to understand this issue. I'm wondering whether you have a particular view about heavy vehicle use and clean fill retaining access to the landfill, or whether your position is simply maximising use of the landfill in the future.
Yeah, personally, I would like to keep it running as it is, and but I think, we're trying to. It's great having profit-making assets in the city and in the council, and the least we could do would be continue it as a clean fill dump site. Same goes, there's very limited clean fill sites in Wellington region, and obviously even now with the fuel prices going up, it costs a horrendous amount to cart from anywhere in Porirua to other tip sites. I think there's one in Upper Hutt, clean fill site, and the other one's TNT landfill, which is on the south coast of Wellington City. So it's a huge distance to drive and the hour and a half turnaround time. So it just drives up prices for everybody.
I'll ask my question, then I'll go to Councillor Duncan. Because you are an individual who works in the sector, you will be aware of other sites, landfill sites across the country and the consenting journey. Can you foresee that the likelihood of a consent like this is likely to be extended, given the council's discussion document suggests that it would be not in the best use of ratepayers' money?
So I'm not particularly aware of other tip sites around the country, but there are very limited ones in the Wellington region. Can you clarify your exact question, please?
I'm trying to ascertain whether or not your knowledge base also includes the historical, the current issues relating to new landfills or extension of existing landfills across the country, as it pertains. This pertains potentially, your submission, to an extension of a resource consent for this plant, for this location.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not aware of them around the country, but I would think that it would be a lot easier to extend the existing resource consent than it would be to create a new one anywhere else in the city.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Councillor Duncan, and then we'll...
I don't know if you're aware, as a council, we would quite like to keep the tip going as well. It's not a choice thing because the situation with the tip at the present, the odour issues and that, and we just can't. We won't get a resource consent for it, so it's not an option from our point of view. You realise that.
I'm going to be careful here. Councillors are not to engage in debate. So
I just want to clarify.
Yes, that's fine. I don't want to accelerate this problem by allowing the submitter to speak to that, because I think it will just create disorder. However, I think that members have heard and had the opportunity to ask questions of Lewis, and I appreciate you coming in and speaking. The time has elapsed, so please, thank you again.
Thank you.
Next up on our list is Grenville Gaskell. Grenville, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present. I do so out of a concern as to rate cost increases past and expectations for the future, and in particular the custodianship of a key service, the Spicer Landfill. I am extremely disappointed in the progress of the Spicer Landfill development project, described as a significant council asset, especially the time taken to consult with residents and the quality of the consultation. I consider there has been a lack of effective management and governance, and make 4 points. The project commenced in 2020 with a reconsent application first put on hold in March 22 and again in 2023. Yet it has taken until 2026 to consult with residents. I think that's shameful. Secondly, residents, in my view, have been misinformed, with key accountability documents continuing to assume the landfill would operate post 2030, when the council knew this was extremely unlikely. The significant impact on rate increases therefore was not disclosed, and I note in the 2024 long-term plan the risk was viewed as moderate, yet council knew the certainty was very high that it wouldn't be consented, and they had a requirement to disclose that and put the financial implications into the long-term plan, and they weren't. Thirdly, the validity of options A, B and C are questionable around the timeframes to build, usage given the expected charges, and I note the charges in my submission, when compared to other landfills, the ability to gain consents, and the lack of agreement from other landfill operators to operate bulk waste. In particular, I look at the tonnage rates proposed versus those of other landfills, and the difference is significant. There is no mention of the impact on curbside collection either. So, in summary, I believe residents deserve better from council, and I consider the current consultation a regulatory tick-the-box exercise rather than meaningful consultation. Unless the risks identified can be mitigated, the only viable option is D, with closure. Even this has risks, with apparently, based on the consultation documents, no lack of engagement with HUT and Wellington City Councils. Clearly, council needs to make urgent progress in assessment, as the viabilities of the options presented before management are questionable and need to be fixed for the new long-term plan. In addition, I urge councillors to undertake a full review of the progress of the Spicer Landfill development project to improve project management and governance, in particular whether management has appropriately engaged with councillors and whether council has met the required standards of disclosure in residential and key documents to residents. So as a ratepayer, I can see the writing on the wall in terms of council knowing for a long time that reconsent was not possible. So I remain extremely disappointed in the lack of progress and the time taken. And as a ratepayer, I think this is just a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you, Grenville. Any questions from councillors? Councillor Lawler, then Councillor Trillin.
Thank you. That's a very sobering presentation. I'm wondering if council had acted in 2020 or 2022, do you have a view about what the best course of action at that point might have been?
I think the council paused both in 2022 and 2023 because of the issues around emissions and odour. Look, I'm not questioning where we've got to. I'm just questioning the process and whether there's been effective governance. And I think either management has misled council or councillors have been asleep in terms of not addressing this earlier. This should have been very visible during the last council election in 2025. And I note that management in previous documents have said that they would be putting a full recommend to council at least a year before the current one. So I think something's gone wrong with the process. And I just urge council and management to have a good look at where we've got to.
Councillor Trillin.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you very much, Glenville, for coming in and speaking. I appreciate your perspective, and I understand that based on the feedback you've given us that you see only D as being the viable option available to us at the moment. Obviously, there's a bit of water to go under the bridge here, and if we are able to address the particular viability concerns that you've identified through this, do you have a view around what the long-term best use of the land is in terms of options A through C, or is your position, even if we can address those issues, that D is still what you consider to be the best choice?
Based on what's in the submission and the tonnage rates and the trailer rates, you know, if you look at other landfills, you're currently looking at about $250, $260 a tonne. And I know council talk about $500 as being the expected rate in 2030. I find that implausible. You know, that's looking like about an 80% increase in the average yearly rate for each of the other landfills. So I think, you know, the question council need to ask is, even if you go for option A, B or C, will users vote with their feet and go somewhere else? Silverstream in particular, I know, is already used by a number of local residents simply because of convenience and cost.
That's your allotted time. Thank you very much, Grenville, for coming in. Appreciate your feedback. Next up is Ewan Scherzer and Matthias Vest, Hutt City Council. Please come forward. You have 10 minutes. Go, Ewan.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you, Chair and elected members, for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Ewan Scherzer. I'm the Head of Climate, Waste and Resource Recovery at Hutt City Council, and as part of my function, I look after Silverstream Landfill, and clearly the decisions that you will have to make will have some implications on the landfill, hence why I'm here presenting Council's position on this. I want to focus on a couple of key messages. First one is that when Spicer closes, there's no question that some of that waste will come to Silverstream. The question is how much, and that's something to be worked through. So it will be very important to closely coordinate and collaborate with us in terms of sharing data, understanding how much tonnage might come to us so that we can adjust our planning going forward. So, and I also want to emphasize that we need to continue that working relationship we have, which is already very strong at an officer level, as I might just point out. Secondly, there needs to be a real step change in waste minimisation and resource recovery. And that's really to assist in minimising the need for disposal going forward. So preserving space is critical because it seems rather unlikely that anyone or any city in this region will be able to consent another landfill. So at this stage, Silverstream has got capacity until about 2055, but that will become less than that with Spicer tonnage being added to the mix. And that also relies on some assumptions around how much space there is at Southern Landfill. So we may well be looking at a scenario where in the 2050s, all the waste that is being generated in the region will have to go somewhere else outside of the region. So importantly, though, this step change in waste minimisation and resource recovery doesn't have to wait until 2030. That can actually happen much sooner than that. And it also isn't just relying on things that might happen at the landfill. It will have to be quite broad. And our waste management and minimisation plan that we're working on jointly is quite of a key plan for that. Not just the current version of it, but actually what's coming next from 2029 onwards. So in terms of the position that we have taken is that we do support options A, B, and C, particularly B and C, because there is greater potential for diversion. But I also want to emphasize that it's not just about infrastructure, it's actually about how that infrastructure is operated. So rather than a transfer station with a few tagged on drop-off bays, what I would like to encourage you to think about is really looking at generating a zero waste hub with a transfer station that's co-located with it. So turn the whole model on its head. And I'm not talking here today about the wider system. So, clearly the waste system has a number of components, whether that's curbside collection, how we deal with construction and demolition waste. So I'm just focusing a little bit on what might be happening at the site in the future. I just want to quickly point out the Silverstream experience, and we certainly have learned, some of you will know, we've introduced a voucher system about 4 years ago. And for about a year, I was monitoring this very closely, and I was scratching my head as to why we're only handing out 2 vouchers a month. So clearly something wasn't working until we tipped the model on its head, where we actually said, look, we need to actively engage with customers. We can't just sort of sit there, have people standing in a row and waiting for everyone to drive past it, because actually no one knew what is recoverable. So we turned the model on its head, and since the change that Earthlink made in terms of actually people, and it's a different type of skill set, actually standing there and approaching every customer that comes in and says, what have you got on your trailer? What can we divert? They've doubled the amount of tonnage that has been diverted. I know that's reasonably small in the grand scheme of things. Silverstream takes 150,000 tonnes. It's a small part or aspect of it, but it does talk to the potential. So the key insights are really around not necessarily relying on free drop-off areas. Everything that comes to Silverstream first go through the gate. So everyone pays, but we do provide discount vouchers. So staff engage directly with customers, and one of the interesting co-benefits is that we have fewer people that leave the site grumpy because they got some money back. So that's really good. So the key takeaway is that I want to just emphasize is that behavior change and engagement can drive results. It's not just about the infrastructure. It's not just putting a bin there and then waiting for stuff to happen. And to protect landfill capacity and meet regional goals, we do need to make some step changes in terms of resource recovery. Just to close, I'd like to extend an invitation to elected members to actually come to Silverstream and have a look at the site. I'm not saying it's the bee's knees and the be-all and end-all, but we have made some real changes over the last few years, and I think there's an interesting model that we can look at to build together. So thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ewan. Councillor Chun and Councillor Lawler.
Kia ora, Ewan. Thanks very much for coming and speaking to us today. I'm very intrigued by this idea around the Zero Waste Hub. I presume establishment of something like that isn't a cost-neutral exercise. Are you able to give us an insight into what sort of costs you anticipate would be expected to do something like this comprehensive Zero Waste Hub?
Looking at the experience at Silverstream, so we've had a transfer station there for basically since the landfill was there since the 1970s. Looking at operational cost, and it's around about $1 million a year to operate the transfer station. Over half of that cost is now associated with resource recovery, and it's really most people don't see that cost, and some of it is the missed opportunity around the vouchers that we hand out, although it's not that significant. So there's no question that there will be a cost to operate a transfer station. Somehow someone needs to pay for it. But I guess the question is, if we don't, what's the alternative? So we have got landfill capacity that is constrained, and Porirua Council has generated some net profit from that landfill for many years, but it only works unless you have if you don't have a landfill, you can't generate that profit. So that money, that cost has to come from somewhere. So what I'm saying is that you will need to allow for some cost whether that's privately operated or whether it's council operated, that accounts for that, because that waste has to go somewhere. If it's not you paying or private businesses, someone else in the region will pay. And I can also point out that there is increasingly questions around, the pricing. So Silverstream in the past has had a model of being the cheapest landfill. That is no longer the case. It's really about we're no longer providing discounts for people to bring in more waste. We're actually making sure that we preserve the space as long as possible, because ultimately Hutt City Council would have to, or ratepayers will have to come up with the cash to then expand the landfill more quickly. So I think it's a system, and we just need to make sure we work together.
Thanks.
And everyone plays their part.
Just one supplementary to that quickly. Thank you. That's very useful to understand. So just from my understanding, there's obviously an ongoing operational cost associated with this. In your view, any potential upfront capital expenditure around establishing a zero waste hub isn't necessarily going to be substantially different to a transfer station that we'd be looking at anyway. It's mostly about the ongoing operational costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, so in terms of upfront cost, I would say we haven't actually spent a hell of a lot of money to change the Silverstream hub. The money that we have spent either has come from landfill budgets, or we've used the waste levy as well, because it's clearly around resource recovery that we've made some of those changes. So I think there are funding sources available for making those changes, and some of them don't have to be necessarily big buildings or infrastructure pieces. They're actually about how do we engage with customers. And that's just at the transfer station site. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, there are a number of other components, how you operate your curbside system, what incentives or systems and infrastructure are in place to divert construction demolition waste. And I note the site that you're about to open later in next month, I think, from Waste Coast, which is one of the components to play a role in this.
Councillor Lawler, then I have Councillor Duncan.
Yes, my first question was the same, really. Can we visit and can we understand the financial model behind it? My second question is around, we have submissions from yourself, we have submissions from Wellington City. I know we have a regional waste strategy, but the submissions, for me, don't indicate a great deal of cooperation and consensus. So I guess I'm interested in your view about to what extent do we really have a regional approach now and in the future to waste minimisation?
Regional collaboration is always work in progress. That's what I would say. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I would say councils do have different views and positions on certain things. What I would say is that the working relationship has really improved and become much better over the last 3 or 4 years, and I've been involved for the last 8. But it's still work in progress, and there's still a lot of things where we say we want to work together, but it's not we're not moving at the same speed. So I would say the development of the next WMMP will be an interesting exercise, particularly in the context of amalgamation. But there are some real opportunities, I believe, absolutely. And yes, happy to share those things like financial models with our colleagues. Absolutely.
I have the time has expired for the 10 minutes. However, I do have 2 people who are left on my speaking list. So what I will do is I will allow those 2 individuals to ask their questions. Please be concise in your wording. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks. You read statistics where 30% of recycling at local areas goes to the landfill. Yep. So it's really difficult to educate people into just doing bloody recycling properly. Do you do anything with those trucks when they come in to dump that truckload in there? If that's 90% recycling and the rest is a bit contaminated?
You mean recycling curbside trucks?
Yeah.
So we do have quite a comprehensive scheme to manage contamination in the hut. So we don't have any curbside trucks currently going to the landfill, because we manage that at the MRF and through bin inspections and other processes. That doesn't mean there's no contamination. The average one for the last quarter sits at 12%. It's still work in progress, and without a comprehensive program, I would say we wouldn't be where we are today. So, and there's a cost associated with that as well.
Councillor Randall.
Yes, thank you. Look, great efforts, and good to see council here as well. Some recycling is easier than others, and I was just wondering what council's view is of the future of managing organics recycling in organics, because there's some of the tougher stuff, and in fact, it's probably the organics that's causing the odours which are causing the problem with the spice landfill.
Yeah, good question. So when we talk about organics, usually people start sort of thinking immediately about food and green organics, and you will be aware that there's been a joint project between Wellington and Hutt to look at processing solutions for that. Well, I'm not terribly optimistic at the moment, at least in the short term, but that doesn't mean that can't change. But organics is much broader than that. Organics also includes biosolids, and we've heard that earlier from Wellington Water. And as they rightly pointed out, there isn't really anything you can do with it at the moment. Well, there are some options that we are exploring, but they are difficult. And whatever you do, you first need to dry it. And I can just categorically say we do not want wet sludge from Porirua and Silverstream, because it's a absolute terrible waste stream to work with. Generates a lot of odour, but it's also very difficult to handle. But there are other organic waste streams, like timber. Very difficult construction material that's left over, but there are avenues for diverting it, and some of it involves incineration up in Golden Bay Cement. So there are avenues that we are working on, but it needs a comprehensive plan. We sort of can't just focus on a little bit of green waste here and a bit of food organics there. We need to look at all the organic waste streams.
Ian, thank you very much for coming in. We'll move on to Jill Day. Kia ora, Jill, Tawa Community Board, you have 10 minutes.
Kia ora koutou, I don't think I'll take that. Morena, it's lovely to be able to be here to speak to you today. So I want to acknowledge Chair, the Mayor and councillors, and also great to have our councillors here from Wellington City Council as well. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Tawa Community Board. We recognise the complexity of the decisions facing Porirua City Council and acknowledge that there is no simple solution. At this stage, the board has not selected a single preferred option, given the uncertainties and the range of impacts still to be fully understood. Reading the documentation, it did feel like there was still a lot of information that we need to understand about the implications. The Tawa Community Board strongly supports Wellington City Council's submission, particularly the urgent reinstatement of a joint committee to ensure clear, accountable governance of the Spicer landfill by both councils. It is essential that Wellington City Council remains involved at the governance level to support effective oversight and collaborative decision making. And it's great to see Councillor Randall able to participate today, so thank you for making that happen. In considering the options, we do have a few comments. We ask that priority be given to cost effectiveness, environmental stewardship, traffic emissions and community wellbeing, particularly the ongoing issue of odour for residents of Tawa. And I do note that it's not just the houses adjacent to the tip area, it's right across Tawa now. It has become a lot more prominent in the community. We also emphasise that shifting waste to another community does not solve the problem. We understand that, it simply just moves it. For this reason, we state that waste minimisation and resource recovery must be treated as urgent, and we encourage all councils to prioritise this work, and it's great to hear the work happening out in the Hutt. And we also have observed, travelling around the country, where you see the transfer stations, sometimes the best waste minimisation is happening there because they're trying not to have to move stuff around. So there is a good argument for having much more hands-on interaction. We note that options B and C would result in the closure of Trash Palace, which we see as a step backwards for waste reduction. We also question whether the proposed timeframes for these options would adequately meet community needs during transition. We have concerns about the risks of full privatisation and strongly support a collective public approach to waste management. Thank you for your time. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Lawler.
Just your comment about full privatisation, is there something in the documents that indicates that? As an
No,
option?
we just don't want to see that come through as an option. Obviously, sometimes things can come through at the last minute from another angle, and we want to make sure that we're clear that we think that public responsibility is so important when you're talking about waste and the environment.
Fair enough. And just a second question, there was a reference earlier to truck movements, and I was just sort of trying to think about my mental map of Tawa. Surely waste coming to the landfill is sort of going in and out of Kenepuru and using Transmission Gully. Just talk to me about the truck movement concern.
I think we're just aware that when you start moving waste around, you're creating more truck movements, which whilst they don't necessarily go through Tawa, they create emissions, and we're concerned about that. So when we talk about our concerns about the landfill and wanting to see things change, we want to acknowledge that we also don't want to make things worse for the environment in the process.
Councillor Duncan, then I'll have Councillor Trillin.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Look, you talked about the odour problems across it. I was surprised. It was an amazing number of submissions across Tawa, but there was an amazing number of those who said there was no odour problem.
It's quite an interesting one. We do also get people commenting on the odour and they can't quite pick what it is. So I think there are a lot of people who sometimes smell it and they're like, I don't really know what it is. But there are particular parts where you get pockets that are pretty offensive. And so I used to live very close to the landfill, and then we moved further along. So I know the smell because we used to have times where we had to retreat into the house. And this is years ago because it was really bad. And we now live further along. So we live actually closer to the Redwood end of Tawa. And I can smell it now, but it's faint. But I know that it's that smell because I've smelt it years ago. But yeah, there are some other pockets sort of further along than you'd expect where people smell it.
Councillor Trillin.
Kia ora, Jill. Thanks for coming in. Just a quick question around the position of supporting WCC's submission on the re-establishment of the Joint Committee. Do you have any particular comments on the structure of what that committee should look like or how it should operate?
I think the key thing is just to make sure that there is a committee, that there is representation from Wellington on. I think that needs to be worked with the councillors and Mayor from Wellington City Council. I don't think it's a good idea for me to determine what that looks like at this point. As a board, we would like to be able to have an input too. As you know, last term we did, and it was helpful for us to understand the issues from a technical perspective, because we don't want to just be in the situation where we're saying the smell's really bad and we don't want to be able to be part of the solution, because we are sensitive to the fact that this affects everybody in the wider area and in Porirua. So it's important that we can participate too.
And any other questions, Nina Pātai? Kia ora, mo te rā take.
Ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi.
Kia ora.
I note that we would have scheduled a break to happen here. I actually think we should just push on if you're happy with that. There are 2 submitters left for this, and I don't want to inconvenience anybody. So what we have next is David Christensen, who has 5 minutes. I understand that David is going to present a video as the submission for today. So David, please come up and let's get ready with the video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, all. I have 2 further documents I would like to present. They are not necessary for this meeting, but may be useful for deliberation afterwards, if that's acceptable.
That is.
Many thanks, Mr. Chairman. Please proceed with
Roll camera.
Okay, let's get right to it. We're here today to talk about the decision on the Spicer landfill, but I want to reframe this from the start. This isn't just about waste disposal. This is about a really fundamental, strategic choice for the future of Porirua City. Look, the decision in front of you might feel like it's just about landfill logistics, but it is so much bigger than that. You're genuinely at a fork in the road for your city's entire approach to waste and to its resources. So let's just put it on the table right now. This is not a landfill decision. The question you're answering isn't simply, what do we do with our rubbish after 2030? The real question is about the very direction of your city. And this really gets to the heart of it. This one decision determines whether Porirua gets in line with regional and national waste strategy, or, and this is the crucial part, if it locks itself into a stranded asset, a costly, outdated model that's only going to get way more expensive to get out of down the track. So let's break it down. You've got Path A, which is really just about finding a short-term disposal solution. It's a patch-up job, a tactical fix. Then you have Path B. This is about embracing a system transition, moving away from that old linear model of waste to a circular one. That's what the entire region is doing, and that is the real choice you're making here. Okay, so what happens if we get this wrong? What are the actual tangible risks of taking that short-term path? What happens if Porirua decides to go it alone and not align with the bigger picture? Well, first off, there's a big immediate financial hit. Your own documents show that the Spicer landfill brings in a $4 million surplus that's used to keep rates down. If there's an abrupt closure or just a poorly managed transition, that whole surplus and the rate relief it provides is put directly at risk. That's something every ratepayer will feel. And beyond that initial shock, you're looking at 3 really blunt risks. First, you're going to be completely out of step with the Wellington Region's waste minimization plan, a plan you've already committed to. Second, you're just kicking the can down the road. You'll face a forced transition later, and believe me, it will be more expensive and way more rushed. And third, all of this puts your ratepayers directly on the hook for the long-term liability and rising costs of a system that's just, well, out of date. So let's be really clear here. Sticking with a disposal-only focus isn't the cheap option. It's actually the most expensive one. You're just deferring the payment. We'd be passing on a much bigger, much costlier problem for someone else to solve. So if those are the risks, how do the current options on the table really stack up? Well, this is where we see a pretty major gap in the current consultation, what you could call the missing middle. Right now, options A through D, they're all basically just tinkering with the same system. They're focused on disposal optimization. They're asking questions like, should we have a transfer station? Who gets to use it? Where do the trucks go? They're all about managing the end of the pipe, not changing what goes into it. And that's the absolute heart of the problem. All the current options are planning for continuation. They just assume things will stay the same. Not one of them plans for a transition to a system that creates less waste to begin with, which, by the way, is the whole point of the regional strategy. So this is where we can step in and offer a more complete picture. A structured transition pathway, let's call it options E, F, and G, is designed specifically to fill that missing middle. This pathway is really just 3 logical steps. First, step E, stabilize. Let's improve the current system, relieve the immediate pressure, and buy ourselves some time to get aligned with regional planning. Then, step F, enable. This is where we start actively building the local capability for resource recovery and waste diversion. And finally, step G, transition. This is the big shift. We move to a circular system where the goal isn't just managing waste, but actually reducing it. It's a practical, step-by-step roadmap. Nothing crazy. And what's so important to understand is that this pathway isn't some radical new idea. It's a direct expression of the commitments Porirua has already made in the regional waste plan. This isn't about changing your strategy. It's about actually doing it. Okay, so with all that in mind, what's the immediate, practical request here? What am I actually asking you, the decision makers, to do right now? It's actually a very simple, very low-friction request. 3 things. First, just formally acknowledge that the current options, A through D, are incomplete. They're missing a transition plan. Second, commit to properly evaluating this structured transition pathway, E through G, right alongside the others. Give it a fair hearing. And third, make sure that whatever final decision you land on, it explicitly aligns with the regional and national strategy you've already signed up to. Look, at the end of the day, this is about so much more than a landfill. This is about turning what could be a liability into a real asset for the city. It's a chance for Porirua to actually lead the way in the region, to build a modern, sustainable, and economically smart system. You can either lead now or be forced to play catch-up later, under pressure, and at a much, much greater cost.
So that's the end of the video. We have expired time, so I can't ask any questions during the window. So I'd ask David, thank you very much for bringing the video and bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
Let's move on to the Northern Ward Councillors, Wellington City Council. You have 10 minutes.
Kia ora everyone, thank you for the mahi that you do. Appreciate being on the other side of the table for a little bit of a change. So Councillor Compton, Takapū Northern Ward, thank you for allowing Councillor Randall at the table, and I'm Ben McNulty, also Takapū Northern Ward and Deputy Mayor. There's 3 things we are going to speak to today, and I guess I'm just going to start with a spade on the first point. We are a bit annoyed. We would be preferring to have designed this consultation with you as the 23% co-owner of the landfill, rather than coming in today in terms of submitting at this end of the process. The submission we've put forward obviously makes it clear our desire to see the joint committee set up as soon as possible so that there is an oversight mechanism. And as we get to some of the other points, I think it will hammer home the real importance of why we want to see that joint committee set up so that we're playing an active role in your decisions moving forward. And I appreciate that there is no clear consensus here, and I've certainly heard from the room, if you were to go on public submitters, there's no overwhelming direction of support or guide that you're getting. I suppose as well, look, as we talk about things around amalgamation and things, how we work together on these local issues really sort of set the scene and how they're important. So we want this to be a successful way of working together, and we're here, and that's the grumble out the way. I'm going to pass over to Councillor Compton just to talk about the impact on Tawa residents. Leave it to you now.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So yes, Tawa is very close to Porirua, and we believe there are multiple considerations to take into account. Absolutely, there is an odour issue for pockets of for Tawa, which we've heard numerous times this morning. However, beyond that, Tawa is also a user of the landfill, including the surrounding suburbs. Even as far as Kōrero, people are bringing their waste to the landfill to avoid going through the city. We would also, ask that any future consultations that are on this go beyond Porirua, and that includes the surrounding suburbs that may be adjacent. If there is a cost to this, there should be a conversation for this.
Excellent. And look, just to add to that, there's a negative symbiosis our cities have with each other. We pollute your harbour through the Porirua stream, and you have no democratic tension around our council table to do anything about that. At the same time, you pollute the noses of Tawa residents, and essentially we have no mechanism at your table to do anything about that as well. So it's where that partnership angle comes into real importance. To the third point, so we've got no clear view in terms of what you should do, but we do ask that your decision is actually made not in the context of your own balance sheet. This is a regional decision. And to hammer home, so the closure impact, we heard from Silverstream, and the pity the officer's left because I'll add a little bit of commentary to what he's added, because I think he has a slightly optimistic or rosy picture of the regional situation. But we expect the closure of Spicer would take our current cell, the Southern Landfill Extension Project, from 7 to 4 years in terms of useful life. If that's filled up, the next discussion we're having is about building the next landfill cell on the doorstep of Zealandia. That is the reality of what we're coming to as the Wellington region. So that's why that point one is really critical, that we are here alongside with you in terms of working through the options and what that means from a regional perspective. But we actually need a regional discussion and solution here is the thing at play. There was a good point around, unlikely any other city in this region can consent another landfill. Do we want to start extending into our nature reserve where biodiversity is thriving and extending up into Porirua in terms of kēreru and other birds coming through, or do we want to try and find another solution that's coming through? He talked about 2050s for Silverstream in their capacity. I'm just saying, for us, knowing that we go 7 to 4, I think that's probably quite an optimistic number. So really, on 1 July, we tick water off. That's sorted. The $6,000 bills are on the way, all good. But this is the next cab off the rank in terms of the regional approach is actually waste. It is critical that we get something in place and we figure out what we're going to do around around filling up our landfills and where that goes. Because whatever your decisions are, it's going to come to Porirua residents, whether that's through increased costs to come and dump into Southern Landfill or through contractors, but we're all going to bear the cost of that. So that's really the critical thing, is that our own assets with waste are in I would say less capacity than we as elected members appreciated even just a few months ago, and your decisions have ramifications that flow on. So happy to take any questions, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawler.
Thank you. I share your frustrations, and I guess my question is to you as a politician. You're presenting as a politician, so I'm asking you political questions. It seems to me that our officers do what they are tasked with doing, which is give us the best technical advice around the options available. However, if we're really to take a regional approach to this, we're going to need some give and take that only councillors can agree to. Like, our city can't afford to not have the surplus from the landfill. That's going to be a problem for us before we consider anything. if we're to have the time to come up with viable other options, we may well need an extension to the resource consent that requires Greater Wellington to take a big picture view rather than a compliance view. Like, there's all sorts of things that have to happen that require a much bigger frame in terms of how this region sorts its waste in a modern way. I'm just wondering what your view is about the current mechanisms that would enable us to take kind of bigger picture decisions. Do they exist, or do we have to create them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, we got there with Te Akiwai, right? Like, it was not a particularly easy thing to land water reform, but we did get there with all 5 impacted parties, Greater Wellington, Porirua, Hutt, and Upper Hutt in the room. So I think there is a track record that we can bring this together as a region. From a Wellington City Council mayoral office side, this has become a priority. We've had a new manager of waste come in at the end of last year. She has basically gone and audited the entire function for us. And we've come, that's part of why we're here today, is that the situation is far less rosy than perhaps we'd imagined. We sort of thought, we've got SLEPO in the back, Southern Landfill Extension Project. We're good. And it's actually, no, we're not, and then your decisions have a ramification onto there. So I think there's the willingness to bring it together. We're having the discussions right now, obviously, around what an amalgamation could look like in the region. And I just can say from our mayor that this is an absolute regional priority. So we're up for it. How we build that, we can figure it out. We did it with water.
Councillor Trillam.
Kia ora, thanks for coming and speaking today. Appreciate that. Thinking about your comments early on around the way in which WCC has been involved, or I guess rather not involved in this process, and your preference around ideally of being involved, I guess, in co-design earlier on. Do you feel that there are additional options that you would like to have contributed to this discussion? Do you feel that the consultation would have looked substantially different if WCC had been involved from that design phase?
It's a really good question. I think I'm running the benefit of hindsight here in any answer. I think there's probably I think the consultation would have looked different because we would have had more of that, the feedback I've given to you around our 7 to 4 years, the next cell being on the doorstep of Zealandia Regional. So I'm sure that it probably would have had some influence sorry, I used a lot of qualifiers there. I'm sure it would have had some influence in terms of what your options may have looked like had it come through. But we're here now. I just really today was the point to say that these decisions can't be taken in isolation and that the whole region is really at play here.
Any other questions? Councillor Randall.
Patsy.
Oh dear.
We can't afford a laptop.
No, that's all good.
We can't afford a replacement laptop, Councillor Randall, so times are tough.
Right, sorry about that disruption. Thank you, Deputy Mayor McNulty. Do you think that if, given that all of the landfills in the region are facing some significant investment in the southern landfill, of course we've got tens of millions looking at extending it, if those financial pressures were put together into the same pot, that maybe some other options might be able to be looked at where co-investment might be able to produce a better outcome for all the councils in the future?
Do that, Chancellor.
Well, I think it certainly has to be on the horizon that we're looking at those options, Councillor Randall. Yeah, and in fact, Jill Day and I were just discussing, there are options that they use in Europe, for example, where they, for lack of a better word, incinerate their waste, but they do it in a green way. And we could potentially look at whether central government could potentially come into play with that.
I suppose one thing I'd raise is, like the regional deal, reading the post, it's a little bit on the back burner now, but if there was a regional deal to be pursued, that waste would probably be at the front of that, and that may be legislative changes around how we process it or government providing pathways to it. So again, there's a discussion to be had.
Okay. We've got to the end of time, so I'm going to close things up at this point. Thank you very much for both coming in.
Thank you for having us. Stealing them in.
We have got to the end of the submissions that we had scheduled today. So I want to thank Councillor Randall for coming in today and speaking to this item. It's most appreciated to have your presence here. And Did you want to speak to this?
Yes, look.
Bear in mind, it's my last word before we go to vote, but okay, go ahead.
No, look, I just want to thank Porirua Council for inviting me to join you up here on the bench and for giving me the rights to be part of all this. I'm very keen, obviously, as outlined by Deputy Mayor McNulty and Councillor Compton, that we want to work together. It is right on the border, and so there's lots of good reasons why we want to work together. But I think me coming up here is a very, very good first step, and thank you for your chairmanship.
Thank you, Councillor Randall. I am getting to the end. Councillor Lauder, do you want
I have a question about the process from here. I'm happy to ask that question wherever it best fits.
So it is covered in the paper. There is officers are to take the feedback from today's sessions and the submissions that have been given, as well as the written submissions of those who did not speak today. And I believe it comes back to Puna Kōrero with recommendations on May the 28th.
My question is, having heard the speakers and read the submissions, there are things that I would want to ensure are covered off in the advice. It seems inefficient to raise them once the report's really been written. So where is our opportunity to request
Your
those?
opportunity is to email officers and council colleagues between now and May the 28th through the CE as well. Councillor Trillin.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to come with a similar comment to Councillor Lawler, given the level of discussion today and the contemplation through the submissions of options that aren't captured within the paper. My preference would be if we could workshop this before we go to TPK. If necessary, I'm happy to move that formally as a request, but I think there's enough for us to be able to work through. For example, I was very surprised to hear Wellington Water contemplating the idea of a extension to the resource consent that my understanding based on previous advice wasn't possible. I would like to thrash that out in workshop. So if we could have indication from officers if that's possible, and if needed, I'm happy to put a formal motion.
I'll allow them to answer in so much it is a process issue. Does any officers want to speak to that?
We just need to be a bit careful, so we're in a formal consultation on a specific issue. But I'm hearing this too, and I appreciate that there's a more strategic, wider regional discussion that we need to have involving all of the councils actually. So completely in your hands as to whether we workshop. It's just what we workshop. So we can't kind of screw up the process that we're in now. But what we can do is in parallel with it, have a look at some of the issues that are coming to the fore now at a more strategic level. Actually, we're turning our minds to those things already to some extent. We haven't got too far down the track yet.
So I think that perhaps the way to remedy this is that notwithstanding the offer from the response from officers, it still remains within us as council members to make any amendments to the final recommendations as well. But I would urge you to collaborate with your council colleagues as to your current thoughts and also seek clarity from officers as we get closer to that May 28th meeting, so that if you are not satisfied with the recommendations put up, that amendments can be placed at that point as well. Is everybody okay with that course of action?
I understand that. I guess just speaking to it, I'm conscious that there's enough information today that I'm not certain that a formal committee environment is going to provide us the opportunity to be able to have the discussions that we need. I want it to be an open workshop. I'm not saying that we should be changing anything in terms of what has been consulted on. I do want the opportunity to interrogate those ideas around, for example, an extension to the resource consent that I had not thought would be viable potential other options. So yeah, I guess my indication would be that I would strongly like the opportunity to be able to have that discussion.
Now, Councillor Law.
And I would point out that within our consultation, we have submitters who've put other options on the table and submitters who've said that they think there is insufficient information available to councillors within our current consultation process.
Indeed, there are provisions within the Local Government Act that allow us to make prudent decision-making, and that relies upon each of us making that determination if that we feel we have enough information from the process as well. That has never changed, no matter what the nature of the consultation is. Again, I suggest that perhaps the way to approach this, so as to give clarity from officers, is to seek what you are looking for specifically from a workshop on that matter. An email would probably suffice, I would have thought. Is the Mayor comfortable with that approach as well, in terms of because this is outside the committee's responsibility in terms of a workshop?
because we're in a process, we have to be very careful.
Yes.
So yes, I would rather you got together or we worked out what those other options are, because there are other things happening behind closed doors that I know about that I can't discuss here. So there are things happening. We only have 4 options in there. It doesn't mean we have to accept it when we go to finalisation. So let's just see what happens.
Councillor Lawler.
I'm sorry, but we don't have advice tabled on other options. We are going to move into quite a formal process. I'm wondering whether a middle ground might be for the report to come and draft to a workshop that marries the 2 processes.
Again, that's not an unreasonable suggestion, but that's probably best served as an email rather than having it debated around this table right now. Okay. Comfortable with that? Okay. So to enable us to get to the vote, sorry, Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, can we ensure that Tony Randall is involved
exactly.
as well?
So, notwithstanding that we will need to have Councillor Randall, who has been a member of the committee, to be able to participate in that part of the process, we are also required to make a vote. Councillor Randall, I'm going to have to ask you to sit in the public gallery while we take that vote. That finicky standing orders. Okay, let us move quickly. We have had the motion, which has been moved. It has been seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? Carried. Thank you, everybody, for getting through that one. That was quite nicely done, wasn't it?
Yeah, thank you for your cheering.
What is our time? I actually think we probably should take a motion now to extend beyond the 2-hour limit. So I will move that we continue this meeting beyond the 2 hours. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Baker. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Let's carry on. So that's passed. Sorry, I should have said that before. Okay. Item 7.2, 2027-2037, LTP Strategic Direction and Planning Assumptions. I'll move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ford. Thank you. Can we have officers to come forward on this one? Again, this has been on notice. Good question. Yes, that's a good point. We may have to just hold for a moment and continue this item. We'll see how it goes, and then we may take morning tea at that point. Okay. Thank you for the reminder. Again, this is an item on notice. Yasmin?
Through you, Chair, I might just do a brief introduction if that's okay. Morena, councillors and Mayor Baker, wanting to just summarise that what we're doing today is seeking approval on the current directions, which are not in any means the final directions. So we've still got a long journey to go through the LTP. They wouldn't actually be adopted until June of 2027. So they have time to be considered by the runanga as well as the rest of the community. So we're having informal consultation and formal. So it is really just to start helping us focus, but it in no way precludes more feedback and more adjusting as we go through the long-term plan process. So just want to make that clear following the feedback you got from the public this morning. We will be spending some time with the runanga on their suggestions. So just wanted to table that. I guess our focus is on making sure that our assumptions are right for Audit New Zealand, where they are particularly focused. So we're trying to be proactive and make sure that we are getting our focus right from the start in order to hopefully lower the risk of radical changes throughout or at the end of the long-term plan process. So we have attempted to refine your wording as best we can following our workshops on the directions. What we've tried to do is ensure that we're being consistent with our role under the Local Government Act, as well as meet the intent that you have for our city. And hopefully you feel that what we've done so far captures that. But as I say, there is more time to adjust as we go through the process. Thank you.
Did you want to add anything to that? Okay. Thank you, Nick, for that clarification. Are there questions? I'll take questions first because I have a question specifically, but so if you don't have a question?
Yeah, thank you. I'll I'll reserve comment. So the question in that case is just around specifically when we had workshopped this, and it's acknowledged in the report that there was, I felt, a consensus around the table of specifically including the harbour within our wording. There's been some wording provided here as to why that hasn't been done that I'm not sure fully addresses what was raised by councillors. So if we could just have a little bit of elaboration as to why the harbour specifically hasn't been mentioned here.
Through you, Chair. It was because we wanted to avoid public confusion about the role for council and regional council. The previous wording was around restoring biodiversity from land to harbour, but ke uta ki tai is a reference to that. But again, we have the opportunity to refine this. The harbour is referenced in the whole system through this way. So
I could perhaps add to that. So Josh, the Regional Council under Section 30 of the Resource Management Act has a duty to restore biodiversity and have a catchment-wide focus. And under the Local Government Act, which is Section 31 of the RMA, we lead land use, local environments and amenity. So the way we had worded the strategic direction was more akin to a regional council than a local government, which we felt was just an extension too far. So what we've tried to capture is the intent, which is having a healthy environment from mountain to sea. And the advice we received was that the Ko Uta Ki Tai represents land to harbour. So that's what we were fine-tuning to capture that intent but not stretch our mandate. If that makes sense.
It makes sense. I guess my observation would be that's not an approach we've taken for the last 6 years that I've been on council, and I think before that as well. So I guess I'd like to understand what has changed in terms of we've prioritised the harbour historically, and now it feels like councillors want to, but we're being told for a technical reason that we shouldn't. I'm not sure I buy that.
So don't want to limit the focus on the harbour. I guess now that we don't own the water assets, wastewater, etc., going in, we're having to reframe. But if you would like to see more prominence around the harbour, we can certainly come back with another machination of that wording. I hear what you're saying.
I do, and I'm reluctant to vote in favour of what we have in front of us in the absence of that. I think it's important, given I feel there was consensus around the table. For the record, I'm very happy with everything else here.
Yeah.
I would be interested to know before we vote of if there is a version of this wording that exists that does include the harbour. If not, I guess I would signal that I would want to have a go at finding some wording that included that and formally moving that. But I would test first whether or not there's some potential wording that you have in mind that would include the harbour.
Yeah.
May I jump in here at this point and just clarifying that, as I've understood it, Ki Uta Kutai covers the entirety of our biodiversity. Water, land, the manu, all of our organisms, the entire thing. That is a culturally appropriate way to describe biodiversity that does not exclude water explicitly. Would that be a correct rationale of that?
Yeah, default to Ruben on the interpretation.
Uta refers to the land and tai is the ocean. So two on the shore and in the ocean.
I'll take Councillor Lawler.
I also have comments, but I'll save those. My question then is, might we consult on options if that's the concern? I mean, in our consultation, will we indicate how our priorities have shifted from the previous LTP to this LTP? I guess is my question.
That's a good part, Ty.
Through the chair, we will test what we have in our early engagement, and it will likely evolve. It's just for now we're setting the intent and direction. We've discussed through workshops that this direction is the way we want to go, but fine-tuning and wording can happen throughout the process, really. Yeah.
Sorry, through the chair, can I just add, the wording that we'd had was nurture our harbour in Taiao, ka uta ki tai, and the rest of it comes after that. So that's one thing. The other is we have put that we will further refine, so we can make sure that we take this point on board without stalling or stopping our momentum, I guess, to move to the next stage.
Councillor Trillin.
Yeah, just speaking to that, thank you very much, Nick, and I acknowledge what you said as well, Councillor Hayward, and I think my concern that I was highlighting was not that the harbour wasn't necessarily covered within what was being said, but I think moving from saying we're focusing on our harbour to we're focusing on all of our environment, including our harbour, that does represent a shift in focus. So I guess emphasising, I understand the cultural appropriateness of the particular wording that's been highlighted. My issue would be resolved by what has been suggested by Nick. I'd be very happy to vote in favour of that. I would see that as addressing the concern that I had, but I'm interested, I guess, in hearing the thoughts of colleagues. But that I do feel that my concern has been addressed by what has been proposed by Nick.
Am I to understand that you may foreshadow an amendment?
Yes.
Can you just repeat?
Yep, so the wording would be nurture our harbour in Taiao, ka uta ki tai, and
carries on
and
as
the rest
normal.
of the words. And involve waste management.
I've got Mayor Baker, then Councillor Wehapi, and then Councillor Ford.
Yep, I'm happy to agree to that. Otherwise, I was going to say, we not add it under lead the city's response to climate change and Kia ora koutou, so that it's added together. But I'm happy either way.
Okay, Councillor Wehapi.
Yeah, I'm not, overly worried if we have it in there or not, because as our chair said, it covers the whole thing. Everything that we do has an effect on our harbour, regardless. So our harbour is always going to be one of our strategic priorities wherever. I think this is a wording issue and not necessary at the moment.
Councillor Ford.
I was similar to the Deputy Mayor. Does the community outcomes not cover the concerns that have been addressed by Councillor Trillin?
I think that may be an open question. If you want, do you want officers to respond to that? Okay, sorry, officers to respond to that question.
Through the chair. So the community outcomes are what we want Porirua to look like in the next future generations now and future generations. That's our kind of long road. Our priorities as defined are what we're going to be focusing on for the next 3 years, short term. And usually it's where investment is. So that's how I see it. But there are opportunities to refine. It's the intent and direction that we're looking for confirmation for today.
Councillor Filo.
I'm happy to have the harbour added in. I think it just re-emphasises it by having it there, as well as ki uta ki tai. On another note, though, I just wanted to speak a bit to the public forum that we heard this morning. Thank you, Nick, as well for what you said about it's not there's still more to iterate. I acknowledge that I support the direction that the framework's in front of us. I really did like what was proposed this morning by Elena and Stevo. I do see that as a good strategy to assist the outcome of thriving local businesses and that pathway. So I don't want it to sort of slip through the gap, and I'm wondering if there's something that we need to do as elected members in this space or in this meeting now, in order to, I mean, obviously it would be what everybody else thinks as well around the table about what was spoken about and if they support what was said. But is there an opportunity for us to put it on the table today?
That is entirely, as a councillor, your prerogative to make an amendment to that, and that would require debate. That said, do officers have any additional comment on that in terms of the process?
Through you, Chair, we thought we would go and visit the Runanga and talk more about the wording. So there are some good words in there, but it's perhaps a bit long and a bit much. And I guess it's whether it's a standalone direction or it's incorporated into the outcome. So we'd like to take that conversation away and have it with the Runanga, and that's part of the refinement and the adjustments that we would come back and spend some time on and workshop with council. Over to you whether you would like that approach or you want something more today.
So just so I understand the process, you want to go speak to the Runanga, wordsmith, succinct it a little bit more, and then come back to us in a workshop to add it in or alter one of the other strategies.
Yeah, these will be. There's also feedback being sought from other members of the community. So we will. This is a journey. We will be bringing you iterations as those ideas come to the fore to test further refinement of your thinking and your direction. So yes, you're correct, Councillor Philo. That is what we would propose we would do on this one in particular. But we expect that there will be more feedback that does the same thing throughout the next year that we've got to the development of the long-term plan.
Okay. And sorry, let's move on to Councillor Lawler. Did you have your...
I have comments on the priorities and comments on the assumptions. Do you want the assumptions later?
I'm actually still waiting for questions because I haven't even had a chance to ask my questions. So I'm just. Can we just?
Okay, I'm not on
I know it's a
questions.
bit untidy. We've got to a place where people have made comments and it's kind of mixed things up. So I'm going to go through and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Lawler, for comment at the end. I have next on speaking order Councillor Leggett. Is there a question? Okay, go ahead.
I have comments as well about economic development because that's what I raised at our last meeting around that. So I'm pleased to see it has been identified and also acknowledged here under thriving local businesses. My question is, why we use the word thriving when in another paper within these documents we say that it's an abstract and subjective word and you can't measure it. So I would like to see that we have a look at something else other than thriving.
Yeah, the question with regards to the use of thriving, do officers want to respond to that? No? Oh.
Through you, Chair, we can definitely continue to refine these as we go along the process. The reason why we've put that in here for this time is that we've now related the word thriving to businesses. Before it was very vague. Yeah, so.
I'll go to Mayor Baker.
Sorry, it was a question for officers. We do have an economic development team already, even though it's small, don't we? It's just that we don't have a budget. Is that, because I agree with what the Runanga said, but that is, I just want to confirm, we do have something here, it's about budgets. Is that correct?
We do have a budget for economic development.
Okay.
I mean, and I suppose when we talk about economic development in those terms, we are inclined to think about it as that business support function. But actually, just about everything the council does is economic development. Our water infrastructure, our roading infrastructure, all of those things are. So there's a lot of money in economic development in the budget.
I just wanted to confirm it was still actually there. So, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Ford.
Sorry, it was random. Because when Lena came in and presented, I was thinking something clicked in my head around the growth strategy. Do we still have that? That addresses a lot of business trying to be open for business. I think we had in there.
Yeah, the growth strategy, there's a lot of linkages into what we would call and highlights economic development, but yeah. But she was really mainly talking about business support, wasn't she? About small businesses and how do we support them. And we have a pretty minor role in that, actually.
I want to ask my question, but are there any other councillors who have questions? Okay. So let's go to point 24 in the paper. The early engagement will be conducted over a 2-week period in May 2026, that one. And bear in mind, councillors, this is new. We have not done this in previous terms. This is a new measure to help that iterative process so that we as councillors do not have to come up with everything in amendments at this meeting. It is part of that process of going to the community and making sure that the assumptions that we have made would be a little bit better because of their involvement in it. So, why is it 2 weeks and not a longer period? And it would appear to me that this is an online first, and there's some engagement in terms of written materials. Why were the decisions made around the tactics for engagement on this item in that way?
Through you, Chair, I can answer that. This is non-statutory and it's something we haven't done before. However, I really wanted to get some insights to our teams before the financial planning began. And it just seemed, we do have a compressed timeline and sort of mid-June, July is when we will look at starting that planning. It's not to say that we can't continue. We can, it's just that that bulk of time is the time we'll be actively pushing for it through social media, and through targeted engagement as well. There's already some groups that potentially want a presentation or I'd be going to visit. So we're reaching out definitely. So there is a mix of digital first. It just from past events, we've had a lot of good push from social media. So I was trying to attract that first, get the word out, spread the awareness that we're doing this. And then actually do some targeted engagement as well.
So just again, a follow-up question to this. So in terms of the report back from officers in regards to this engagement, to what extent are we going to see the feedback coming in? Is it going to be just summary only, or is it going to be a far more in-depth capturing of that feedback from community? I'm just trying to get a sense of what, because ensuring that we don't miss anything as part of that process, or it is filtered, because what we want ideally is effectively an unvarnished view. They want to be very straight up about what their feedback is at this stage.
Through you, Chair, we will be providing a insights report. What that kind of how we capture that, what it looks like at the moment. We're working through the system. We haven't got that far in the planning. However, we will be coming back to you with a full report. Again, it probably will look different to when we consult formally. There are the questions that we'll be asking are actually quite open-ended. So we're just working through how to capture the insights best, really, whether if it's giving them options or just giving them free space to write.
Okay, those are my questions. Before we go to comment, I get a sense from around the room that there is a view for the amendment of the biodiversity priority to incorporate the wording and harbour after Ki Ito Ki Tai. And I'm prepared to have the motion amended so as to incorporate that change, so long as my seconder, Councillor Ford, would be happy with that as well. Okay. So, point of order.
To clarify the particular wording, if you're looking to move that from the chair, which I'm very comfortable with, it was specifically for the wording to be changed to nurture our harbour and tail. So that is the particular proposal.
Right, so you want it in that space.
Yes.
Okay. We all love watching the sausages get made, aren't we, today? I'm happy with that amendment. I'm sure Councillor Ford is well. Can we just, so we don't need to, do we need to move to change it? It's just done because
Just
of
a
the...
question about the amendment.
Sorry? You want to talk about the
No,
amendment?
I have a question. Does it include and devolve waste management?
Yes, everything else would remain as on notice.
Okay.
So we don't need to, that leaves us still in the substantive. So we can continue to talk. I'll take comments now. Councillor Lawler.
Okay, I'll try and be brief. I don't support and devolve waste management. I think it's covered by tai ao and ki uta ki tai. I think it's clunky. I know words don't matter to lots of people. Words actually do matter to me. That's my professional discipline. So I don't support and involve waste management. I also don't like champion the well-being and amplify the voices of our communities. I'm happy for us to champion well-being if that's what we want to do, but we don't amplify voices of our communities if we don't have a process to understand those voices. So I prefer the active and engaged community language. In terms of economic development, I think the point that I heard from Eleni was, and her colleague on procurement, was around retaining local value. And I think it's very important, if we're going to include reference to economic development, that we understand that, because previous economic development strategies have been, how can we persuade a call centre that might set up in the Philippines to set up in Porirua? You know, that kind of zero-sum game. Economic development is not what we're talking about. We're talking about growing local value within our community, so the wording needs to reflect that. And in terms of the engagement, I agree. The problem with a 2-week time frame is community organisations that want to be involved might not have a meeting in that 2-week time frame. So then one person has to decide, am I going to try and represent the views of a group? Unless there's good forewarning so that groups can organise to give feedback in that 2-week time frame, it'll be quite hard for some groups to respond. Kia ora.
Any other comments on the substantive? Councillor Leggett.
I actually support Councillor Lawler in terms of the suggested amendment to nurture our taio, or to add in harbour, which I support. I support removing evolve waste management because I think it is handled elsewhere as well. You made multiple other comments. I'm not sure how we're going to address those, but I'm certainly supporting your first one. And economic development is something that's going to be handled.
Councillor Wehabe, sorry, you were on the speaking list, sorry.
That's okay, all good.
Apologies.
I feel like we've gone around and around. I'm happy with the intent and the direction, which is what this paper is. We have the ability to refine this further and change wording in further meetings. So I don't know why we're going round and round in circles about words at the moment. I do understand that they're important to you, but there are other ways and there are other meetings and time after we've spoken to the community where we can actually do that. So I'm also not going to throw my toys out the cot if it goes the other way, right? But I just want to be clear that I thought this paper was about the intent and the direction. So I got the memo. Thank you.
Councillor Philo.
Well, my understanding, and I think it's further along, is that this that we needed to sort of confirm a little bit of today, and that wording was what was going to be used to go out to the consultation. So I guess that's a question. Was that wrong?
It's pre-consultation. This is not part of the formal LTP, which we do.
Oh, pre-consultation.
This is a separate and additional process. That's what this agenda item relates to.
I guess it was just because there was something around if we said no to this, it would slow things down and delay the process. So that's what kind of made me think that. So my comments on the substantive, I also agree about dropping the evolve waste management is my 2 cents for that, and part B as well, about championing the well-being, amplifying voice. I'm not too sure about that one. And obviously, as I've said before, I'm very supportive of putting a resilient economy-like strategy in here. I think it's really important.
Thank you, Councillor Phil. Councillor Trilland and Councillor Duncan.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so on the question of wording, I'm happy to finesse any future changes through the process that we'll go through. I think that's appropriate. Just to clarify, my particularly speaking up around a harbour, that was because I felt there was a consensus around the table in the workshop. I thought that specifically was important, but beyond that, I agree with your comments, Councillor Wehapi, and I think let's thrash this out through the process. One thing though, if we're going to do that, is we want to make sure that the process is right, and I agree with Councillor Lawler's comments around the length of time on that pre-consultation. I'd like to see a month. My question would be, off the back of Councillor Lawler's comments, is it possible for officers to make that change? Do we need to formally move that? And if so, if Councillor Lawler wanted to put that formally, I'd be happy to support that.
Officers?
So through you, Chair, yes, we can extend that informal testing feedback time to 4 weeks if that's the request put on the table by councillors. We can implement that.
I don't know if it needs to be the amendment. I think you've got the assurance from officers that it's going to be 4 weeks.
I'm satisfied with that, and given that I'm really happy with the direction of travel, happy to support this. I think the team, we've given you a lot of feedback and thrown you a whole bunch of different stuff, and I think you've actually done a very good job at threading that needle. I'm sure there'll be a few small changes, but I do get the feeling that we're 95% of the way there. I did just want to very quickly speak to the question around potentially adding in a fifth economic development focus objective. I think we actually did discuss that quite thoroughly as a proposal through our workshop process. Substantively, I guess I agree with a lot of the comments that were made in the public forum, but I do think that the focus we have at the moment in terms of what has been proposed, my view is this does actually encompass what our core objectives are, and that the sort of work that is being requested, I think that can be addressed through what we have here, and in particular for things like procurement. We know that weaves through everything, so I thought those were good comments. I'm glad to hear we're going to engage further with Ngāti Toa. I think let's keep having that conversation, but at this stage I do think we've captured this well. So that's all my comments for now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Trilland. Councillor Duncan, and then Councillor Ford.
Yeah, look, I echo Councillor Wehapi's comments there, and I also like the idea of taking out evolve waste management, because then we can put an English translation for what kiuta kitai means, because I looked and I thought, what the hell does that mean? And I'm sure that would be 90% of people in Porirua as well. So if we could have an English translation, that would be nice.
Okay, Councillor Ford.
Just after, what's the final wording that's going out for the priorities?
So I think apart from the change of the harbour being added in, there are at the moment no other changes being suggested unless there is a view to amend, because I've already just changed it. We've already changed one, and I have a view around changing the other one. But Councillor Lawler.
Cool.
My apologies. A question. I realise my my newness to this process is showing. I'm just wondering when we would make comment about planning assumptions. Do you want that now?
Yes.
Okay, shall I go now?
You mean planning assumptions? And yes, that would be fine. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
This is the item.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up. Whatever it is, we have a planning assumption on the second page of the planning assumptions around, they're not numbered, around climate change and natural hazards, climate adaptation response. I don't think, I agree with the planning assumption. I think I'm looking for the heading of whatever it is. The description is needs to be strengthened, because the description, if you look at climate change and natural hazards, Council assumes climate change impacts and natural hazards will increase over time, requiring ongoing investment. And Council assumes adaptation and resilience responses can be progressively planned and funded over time. I don't believe what we are now experiencing, you'll have heard the insurance company talk about the number of unexpected events we've had already this year. I actually think it would be more helpful for the public and for people involved in council business to understand that we have to expect events that we have not planned for and arguably have not budgeted for, and we will have to provide a response to those events. That's what climate change is about. So I think we are inappropriately confident in our description about our ability to plan and fund our response to these events. But that's what the description says.
So I note that comment, Councillor Lawler. I'm just trying to interpret it so as to make sure that we can continue with the business of the meeting. Are you looking for that to be amended?
Yes, I guess I would be looking for something that says that we understand that these events will continue to happen and that we will endeavour to plan and respond to them, but that it is increasingly difficult to factor that in because that's the honest-to-God truth. Wellington City did not plan for and will struggle to fund the impact of the rain event over the last week. And so our planning assumptions should reflect the uncertainty that now sits around these events.
I think that there is a question in there for officers to answer with regards to risk assessment. Perhaps officers can feed into that. And perhaps, if it is possible, to amend the discussion document to highlight that additional issue.
I think Councillor Lawler has an excellent point, and councillors will be participating in a risk discussion shortly, and this is top of mind right now, weather events. But I think I'll defer to Nick in terms of the process to manage this, but I think that is a valid point. Increasingly, we won't be able to manage these risks.
Through you, Chair, I agree with Wendy. I think that is a really good point. Much like the strategic priorities, these words will evolve over the course of the long-term plan journey as new information comes to mind. The fuel energy assumptions will be the same. So we can absolutely reflect that in these assumptions, and we will continue to do so through the journey. By way of process, every month from now on, you have long-term plan workshops and reports. So we will bring the feedback from people, this conversation with Ngāti Toa, back into a workshop to revise and incorporate that in the journey that we're on. So we will come back to this. We will factor that into June probably, because we'll let 4 weeks run on the feedback so that we'll be back.
Does that satisfy your question? Okay. I see I've got no one else on my speaking list. I'm going to close up the debate. I'm having a final word, and we're going to go to the vote. The first thing is, I wanted to reiterate, this is the good thing out of this is that it is a process that has not been done before. Council members will be aware of, and I'm not the only one, of the trying to challenge the challenges of the trust and confidence that the public have in council, and not just ours, but councils in general. Providing more opportunities, even if they are not part of formal or legislative processes, is better for us in the long run. I have no expectation that we were going to get it perfect in terms of what wording we would have on the first bounce. That's why we have an iterative process. It is important, therefore, that the questions be open-ended and that the community be given as much opportunity as possible, as is reasonable, to help us with that process. I want to appreciate the work of staff up to this point and their willingness to look at additional 2 weeks to make it 4 weeks of consultation as well. I am also heartened to hear that in terms of our council business, we will have additional workshops and there will be additional on-ramps for us to have proposed changes as well. As councillors, you have that ability to do so. And nothing stops you, independent of these meetings, to continue to ask questions and seek clarity as you make an informed, prudent decision. I think reflecting on the specific wording, because I haven't had a chance to feed into that, other than asking the question about ki uta ki tai. It always aligns with my own behalf of my neck of the woods, my makatu ki Tongariro. So I'm from Te Aroa, and we refer to Makatu on the coast and Tongariro the mountain. That's why ki uta ki tai resonates with me. We have used words, Māori words, in the rest of our strategic objectives as well. Hopefully, we don't need to have translations for all of those kupu as well. But I get the last word. But I am mindful that the process will allow us to also use this as a teaching moment as well. In previous workshops, I've used the phrase, the tikanga can help us out on this in this instance. That's why ki uta ki tai is a very useful phrase, because it covers the entirety of te tae ao. So to the comments of regards to incorporating harbour or not incorporating waste minimisation, ki uta ki tai covers all of it. I te mea tai ao, as far as I am concerned. We will have to do a teaching job in terms of communicating that with the public, but that is important context in terms of words. In terms of amplify the voices of our community, I think that is a question that we have to address because we have such a low voter turnout rate. We are not necessarily amplifying the voices of our communities. I understand that the language is difficult to quantify because amplify, what does that mean precisely? But it is important that we need to think about that. I'm reminded of a great phrase. If you cannot say what you mean, you cannot mean what you say. We're going to have an opportunity to allow the community to say what they mean. Let's go to the vote. It's been moved, it's been seconded. It is voting on the substantive. So that's with the harbour incorporated in. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? Carried. Thank you, everybody. We're going to take morning tea. So we will take a break for 20 minutes? Oh, okay. Let's take a break of 20 minutes. We will be back here at 11:25 a.m. Kia ora koutou. Everybody, let's kick back into it. Thank you very much for being back here. We're going to shift one of the agenda items so that we can, again, reduce the amount of distress to those who are coming and give them and be efficient with ourselves. So I'm going to move up to 7.4 and we'll come back to 7.3 afterwards. So 7.4, Porirua Wastewater Treatment Plant Update. I will put the item on the table. Seconded by Councillor Ford. Could I please have our representatives from Wellington Water to come forward, please? Sorry. Reiterate the point that consider the items in the report as tabled, that have been tabled as read. Go ahead, G.
Kia ora, everyone. So it's really good to note that I've just been reviewing the plant effluent quality and can confirm that it continues to be excellent at this point in time, although the report notes a couple of short duration performance issues with the UV system during the reporting period. One issue relates to the penstock control for the new Duron unit, which has been an ongoing issue. The team are planning to enable the drain down of the channel where the flow passes through to undertake an inspection. This is not, however, a straightforward thing to do, as we need to keep the plant going and compliant while we do it. The other issue relates to a weather event which required both UV units to be in operation during this weather event. The power went out, and during the start-up sequence, the old attack unit faulted. We're exploring options on how we can avoid this in the future, but this is, again, complicated by the fact that we cannot test the issue without causing the undisinfected discharge that we're actually trying to avoid. So we're working through with the design team on a solution for that to prevent a future occurrence. Happy to take questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy. Questions? Councillor Lawler?
I know it's not contained in your report, but I'm just wondering how our plant fared in the recent rain event.
Pleased to report it was, went completely seamlessly. Ran really well.
Any other questions? Because I've got Councillor Philo.
So I've got a few questions. If we could just go a little bit further with, what you were saying about the Duron. My question is, so in point 18, where it talks about needing to switch from the Duron to the TAC and the TAC UV and that being because the Duron wasn't working. I'm just wondering, when you switch like that, does it reduce the quality of the process?
No, not to the point where that you'd be changing any compliance consent. I guess compliance discharges. No.
So why isn't it done all the time that way?
Well, the newer unit's more efficient, so we like to run on the newer unit just for that efficiency.
So it's better on power? Is that
Yes.
what you mean? Okay, cool, thanks. My other question was page back on page 393. It was on point 15 around the discussion with Greater Wellington Regional Council. And my question is, it's got here that Wellington Water declined the interview. Why was the meeting declined?
We'd provided feedback via Please Explains letters, and we had provided written explanations.
But they still wanted to meet you in person?
Yeah, and we asked them for the questions and responded to them.
Okay. So, because we now been told about the fine, do we know how much yet?
We should be mindful that if there is a legal matter that we are not allowed to talk on that item. So we should be very careful around that line of questioning.
So, yeah, I mean, with that in mind, it is part of a regulatory process, so we're working through that. But I can say that the improvements funded by council with the solids handling project will give us, the redundancy in the system to help avoid future incidents like that. So, I mean, there's projects underway that will help avoid a repeat.
Okay. Thanks. My last question was just on point 35. Can you please just expand on that about the Rokutane Point upgrade?
I might defer to Mike in this one.
So, Councillor, you recall this is the issue to do with the pipes that go to and from the pump station, and how we plan to upgrade the to replace the fourth pipe inside the pump station, but Wellington Water's analysis showed that the pipes themselves that go to and from the pump station would actually high risk of fail if we did that because of the pressure. So that's on hold for now, and whilst the analysis has been done, it's gonna fall on Te Aki Wai's watch in terms of when that gets done.
Okay, so the point about it being presented to us for capital delivery, that will not happen. That will happen with Te Aki Wai?
It has been presented to officers, but it needs to go into a long-term planning process. That won't be ours, it'll be the next planning session for Te Aki Wai.
Cool, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Leggett.
Point 31, the city wastewater storage tank project. Can you give us an update on that? That actually seems quite old, that information in there. Is there any information for us about when it's actually going to open? Do we have a date now?
If you don't yet, you're about to get a invitation to the formal ribbon cutting next month at the event. But in terms of operationally switching it on, Steve?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Sorry, I haven't been as close to it as I normally would, but I understand they've been through commissioning. I'm just not 100% sure whether it's on operationally yet. We'll have to get back to Mike on that. Yeah.
It's imminent, and we can come back to you with.
Can I just ask a supplementary? And so, in the latest wet weather event, had the tank been operational, would it have prevented overflows?
No, I had a look at the figures earlier in the week. The latest weather event was so large that it would have filled the tank and then overflowed anyway.
Right.
The tank would have reduced the discharge, by a large amount.
Yeah, that was the point of my question. It would have reduced the amount of discharge.
It would.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, guys. My one's just with item 20. The storm saw the Duron and Takni V knocked out, but only the Duron came on with the generator. Are they both connected to the generator?
Yes, they are both connected, but when they powered up under the generator, the older unit tripped out. So that meant that the new unit carried on, and then I think it was 47 minutes later the operator was called out and reset it, and away it went again. So we're just trying to work out what exactly caused that issue. But yeah, like I say, we need to have both the high flows and the power outage to test it. I think they're dealing with the design team about what could have caused it, and so they're looking at what the options are. They'll come back to us with what their solution is. We'll make that, and I'm not suggesting that we turn the power off in a storm event. We'll just wait and see if it happens again. But it is really tricky to test it without actually causing the problem you're trying to avoid. So yeah.
Thanks. I'm going to ask a couple of questions here. First of all, point 15, Councillor Fellow asked about that item regarding a request from Greater Wellington to meet in person. In your experience, is it frequent to not meet with Greater Wellington on these types of situations? Is this a normal occurrence?
I haven't been in this situation before, so I can't comment.
Okay. Then let's move to question 31. Question 31. During the public forum, there was a point made, which is that the people of Titahi Bay, of which several of us are residents, their properties aren't directly connected or connected to the wastewater storage tank. It was my understanding that even if we were not connected to the tank, it still benefits residents in Titahi Bay because it helps reduce overall flows from the rest of Wellington so as to allow the flows that are coming from Titahi Bay in a heavy rain event to be able to go up to the plant and thereby mitigate the issue of an overflow event. Is that correct?
No, that's unfortunately not correct. They're completely separate pipes that go up to the tank. So the Rukatare pump station will pump independent of the storage tank.
But if there was, if the storage tank is on the other line and that has been used to hold flow at that point, is there no subsequent capability between that storage tank and the plant on that line to reduce flow so as to enable the flow from Titahi Bay to be able to get up to the plant without having to deal with the risk of overflow?
No, because the tank is only taking the excess. We're pumping as much flow to the plant as we can possibly do so.
Thank you for clarity on that item. Are there any other questions? Okay. So I don't think there's any comment on this one. I just want to say, I know that this may very well be the last or second to last time we're going to see each other around this table. And I have made point when I was chair of the joint committee to thank you for coming in and being prepared to deal with the grilling from us as public representatives on this matter. I want to assure you that none of the comments that have been raised, notwithstanding a few very small number of exceptions, have been to highlight the people who are on the shovel at Wellington Water who are doing this work day in, day out. I think the events of the past few days illustrates how important the work can be when things are at its most trickiest. Thank you for coming in and participating with that.
Thanks a lot, and really appreciate the support and funding from council to a number of the projects that are underway. It's been really pleasing to see that funding come through, which will make a real difference to the environment and community. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, Steve. We're going to move to close this one up. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? Carried. Thanks, everybody. We're going to bounce back to 7.3, the annual plan financial and non-financial update. I move the motion. Is there a seconder? Mayor Baker, thank you. We are required to just receive the report, and these are the fees and charges scheduled for the proposed annual plan, and that there are updates with regards to the communications approach and the next steps with regards to the annual plan. Officers? Oh, yes. There are. Ian, how are you going? The floor is yours, Ehua.
Thank you, through you, Chair. This is a reasonably light update. There hasn't been a lot that has happened since our discussions pre-Christmas that have made certainly the financials look any different from what we were suggesting pre-Christmas, with a couple of exceptions, and I'll just kind of go through those. One is the roading maintenance contract has now gone through the procurement process, so we do know that those costs will be increased in the 26-27 financial year and that's about an additional 0.8%. So where we were talking about a 3.1 prior to Christmas, we're now talking about a 3.9% increase to rates. And the only other thing which I think we're all aware of is general economic feel has been impacted by what's going on in the Middle East. And whilst we cannot measure the impact on inflation yet, we do know that there will be a negative impact coming. So there's just, I've added that as a fifth area of uncertainty, if you like. Nobody is quite prepared to put a number on it just yet, but we know that it's going to be more than perhaps what we have in our draft model. So other than that, there's the update on the fees and charges. Generally, we've stuck with that 2 and 5% increase that we talked about pre-Christmas. And then there's the update on the communications approach and the next steps. So that's just a very high-level run through the paper. Open to questions if you have any.
Councillor Lawler.
I have a question about point 17, our combined position. I just wonder whether that's an approach we usually take, because it feels a bit like we're saying that if our neighbouring, Greater Wellington and others have a high rates percentage, then we need to make sure ours isn't so high. It feels to me a bit clunky. We need to make decisions in the best interest of our city. What people around us do is their business. My first question. Second question is more about fees and charges. I just don't understand the new charges relating to RMA monitoring. Who's paying those? The RMA complaints investigation, an hourly rate of $2.45. Who's being charged? That wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, I'm going to ask Derek Cariti, who's the Manager of Resource Consents, to come and answer that question. If that's okay, Derek?
And while he's making his way, maybe I'd just address the first question there, which was around the comparatives across the environment, if you like. So there's the three players in this space, so Te Aki Wai, ourselves, and Greater Wellington Regional Council. We don't normally refer to what other people are doing when we're setting our own rates. But I am aware around this table we've had a lot of questions and historically about what it means for our community. This is an exceptional year with Te Aki Wai coming on board. I just put that in there for an FYI. It does not impact on the rate setting process for Porirua City Council, but it's a really interesting point I think many councillors have asked for in the past.
Through you, Chair, just to answer your question around the monitoring and enforcement. So previously to the RMA reforms, we weren't able to charge for any enforcement taken against the person who's carried out the breach. So now we can. So the person who's actually breached will be the person who'll be up for that payment.
Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Look, it all makes good sense to me. The one that really tripped me up was the generic traffic management plan. Who pays for that? That's going from $650 odd to $1,000. Is that local school galas and things, or what is that?
So we've got Joe. I'd like to introduce Joe from the Kōrero Access team, who will be able to answer that question, Councillor.
So the generic traffic management plan it's a traffic management plan that lasts for a full year, and the main people that will pay for that is contractors and utility operators.
So just so I want to, because I want to ask a clarification on that one, just to be clear here, the groups who are not likely to pay this are community groups, schools and other organisations that would be required to have a road closure or traffic management plan in place.
So they would generally have a site-specific traffic management plan, not a yearly a generic traffic management plan.
But the charging regime is different from the one that we're talking about here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Leggett.
Can I ask a question? What happens if we increase the non-regulatory 2% to 3% or CPI?
If we were to do that, it would decrease the level of rates. Now, I haven't quantified.
No, I understand.
That,
Sorry, I was after the quantum.
Oh.
Because as a general comment, and we've had this discussion before, we have done this for years and we're actually reducing the real cost of providing these services. So that means that there's a cross-subsidy that comes from other ratepayers to users. So I'm just asking the question.
We could do the... So I'll just invite Graham to the...
Just waiting for Graham.
Thanks for the question, Ross. I'm not sure, we're not approving the fees yet in this. No, but we've got to remember there's a deliberations meeting at the beginning of June. What I can do for that meeting is provide council what the impact would be, so you can make the decision then.
Yeah, I think that resolves that. Mayor Baker.
Just a quick question. I know we're not debating this, but we always hit the dog owners, and I know I don't have a dog and I'm not protecting anybody, but we seem to hit certain groups and they just keep going up and up. Compared to the rest of the places around the region, are we higher? Because it seems to be.
Officers?
That's a good question. Can I come back with an answer on that question?
Councillor, are we happy?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions and a comment, if I may. Thank you. I thought we were being asked to approve the fees and charges today. That's what the paper says. Approve the fees and charges scheduled for the proposed annual plan of 2026-27. Are we approving these today or not?
I think this is for the proposed annual plan.
Right.
So it's there is an opportunity to come back at, with, and just with regards to the, excuse me, just with regards to the dogs, I think that's coming through as a separate paper in a future
dog
meeting.
control, possibly.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you. I'll continue my...
Go ahead.
So my other question is, in regards to the arena hireage, there is a Porirua school fee and a community fee. I want to know if colleges in the Porirua area comes under schools or not.
I'll, would you like to come to the table?
I'm giving you a job, Helen. While you're sitting there.
I'm a facilitator here. I do not know
I want to
necessarily
say
all the
yes to
details.
that, but Helen's here.
Because I'm not loud enough. It does apply, but it only applies between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. So it's only during school hours.
That's very helpful. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Being here.
And my comment.
Proceed.
Thank you. I think I've made my position pretty clear on the regulatory fees and charges increases, and I'm pretty sure I didn't support it back in December. I understand the rationale and the reasoning, but I don't agree with it and I don't support it. I know that you'll say in some ways fees have only gone up 10 cents or $8 or whatever, but we were already set very high and very high compared to a lot of other neighbouring councils in our region. So, as I said, I understand the rationale. I've sat through workshops. I understand. I've got the information. But I just want to make my position clear that I actually don't agree with it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Philo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was really just to follow on what the Deputy Mayor said around point 2 of the recommendations, and I'm just wondering whether appropriate wording, rather than saying approve the fees and charges, maybe the appropriate word would be note the fees and charges scheduled for the proposed annual plan.
I'm happy for officers to answer, though the way I've read it is that it is a proposed annual plan, and notwithstanding the unusual circumstances of this annual plan in terms of consultation, there is still an opportunity for council members to sign off on the final annual plan, and that would be, I would think, the appropriate time to make that change then. However, I do note the point Councillor Phil and Councillor We Happy have contributed to debate. I just want to make sure. Do we have any questions? Because I want questions before we get to comments. So I'll go to Trillin and then I'll go to Amir Baker.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, it is just a clarification around that process actually, because we're not consulting. So I'm trying to understand, we have a proposed annual plan that we're not consulting on, and then a final annual plan. What does that process look like? Where is the stage in between that we then revisit this? Because that doesn't quite make sense to me.
So in terms of the fees and charges, we're just capturing what is in our long-term plan that we did consult on, so that, so we don't need to consult again on that. If you want to make changes between now and the final, that is possible. Depending on what those changes are, we would advise you whether the decision was big enough that it would require some consultation, but fees and charges are unlikely to attract that unless you've got something very large in mind.
So I guess to clarify, I'm not actually specifically necessarily proposing anything, but that's the exact circumstance I'm cognizant of, and I'm worried that if we don't resolve any proposed changes now and we get to the end of the process, and at the end of the process we're moving amendments around changing this that could then create problems, then are we setting ourselves up for more trouble than it's worth? So I wonder if it's just worth interrogating that a little bit more and understanding exactly what that process is going to look like.
Are we talking about fees and charges?
Yeah.
Or are we talking about...
Yeah, and because I'm not making any proposals around changes, what I don't want to happen is to get to the meeting where we're signing off on the final plan and people feel that that's the opportunity to change the fees and charges, and then we're doing napkin maths at sign off to try and make it work, and I don't think anyone wants that.
My personal view here would be that as long as you're within the LTP guidelines, that would be fine. If you're going to, particularly if you're going to raise them significantly for something that would have a wide impact, there might be some. So I am crystal ball gazing here because I don't know what any of you are thinking, but yeah.
Would it be possible, because I've heard some councillors say let's maybe put them up a little bit more, and I've heard some councillors say let's put them up a little bit less, and I feel like we might need some concrete options that we're voting on when we do come to the end, just so we know exactly what the financial implications of that are. And maybe if councillors that are thinking about that are able to foreshadow those proposals as soon as possible.
Yeah, I suggest that you send me an email and just let me know what your thinking is, and we can get some advice back to you on that.
Okay, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mayor Baker.
My question is it financially an issue? You have the schools for the hireage of the facilities, like the arena, between 9 and 3. Is there a financial implication, or if we let them go into the evening? Because they have all these tournaments and they have to go out of the region to use other places because they can't get the prices that they have. So is that a financial implication if we let them come into Porirua, stay in Porirua?
Through the chair, there is a financial implication on that because we then take out corporate hirers with a high demand facility. So if we're generating revenue to offset the rates, we're going to lose some of those big cost events by allowing the schools. So it's about priorities. If we want to prioritise or whether we're trying to have a balance. So the current structure enables a balance where the schools can use it during school time for school activities. But outside of that, we've got a commercial model that we also need to meet targets on.
Well, even if it was increased till 5 o'clock, you could get a tournament in. But I just think that sending our kids into the event centre in Wellington because it's cheaper for them is not financially good for our residents. And I'm sorry, I'm pushing back on this one. I really would like to know an actual financial cost, because if I'm talking 2 hours, what's that going to do? And I know you're looking at me grumpily because I didn't warn you, but sorry.
There's always, we will have timed that so that we can set up for a corporate event, because you can't just stop and start instantly. We can do some assessment around that, but the council's position currently is that it is a joint commercial and community facility. And probably I'd say the LTP is the best time to debate whether that is what you want to retain.
Thank you. Yep, that's good. Thank you, Wendy.
I can add one supplementary to that as well. We're thinking regionally around our facilities. We do have, we are underserved for covered court areas in Porirua. Wellington City Council is potentially looking at new facilities in Granada with covered courts, and we're also looking at, if we can afford it, having covered courts up in Cannons Creek in the renovated cage. So we're trying to attend to covered courts in other ways regionally and in our communities.
Okay, that helps me. Thank you.
Councillor Ford, then Councillor Biabi.
Yeah, I was just going to add to the Mayor's comments. I mean, corporate events are normally well known in advance, I'd imagine. So if a school was looking to, schools aren't as organised, I guess, in terms of tournaments and stuff. Is there an ability for council to be agile in terms of enabling that, enabling a tournament that might go to 5 p.m. on a day that corporate hadn't pre-booked?
We do tend to be booked out quite far in advance. Schools can be quite demanding as well in terms of the time allowance. So if councillors want us to make that policy, we can, but there will be a financial impact.
Councillor, are we happy?
Thank you. I just want to say that you have staff in that area of the arena that are very helpful. So just want to pass that on. But also, I feel a little bit triggered because we've talked about possible covered courts in Cannons Creek and in Granada, yet we have 8 netball courts in Mungavin Avenue that has been owned by the council for years and absolutely no thought into putting or doing anything there. Yes, I know you've just done the floodlights, but I mean, that's also something else to think about as well, that we've got that asset that going forward, probably in the LTP is the better place to discuss it. I would like to have a look at that. Thank you.
Councillor, is any officers? I don't think there's any officers. Oh, you want to? Okay.
We can look into that. Thank you very much.
There we go. Any other questions before I ask my part? All right. Okay. It's somewhat related to the last line of questioning. There has been in the previous triennium some attempts to try and figure out the burden of sports fees on community and sporting groups for rangatahi me tamariki. I'm not sure where that ended up in terms of the review. There was some work done. It was not very robust. Can we just get a confirmation as to what the current thinking is in terms of reviewing that and the impact on whānau? Okay.
Well, that piece of work that we did came here and was on sports fees.
Yes.
Yes. We briefed you back on that. It wasn't really very decisive in terms of where we should go, and so it didn't really result in any substantive change.
Okay.
Through the chair, I have met with the other GMs across the region. We have noted that as an issue. We think it's something that, if amalgamation goes ahead, would actually give us clarity on working together. But in the interim, Mike's correct. Their report wasn't particularly useful.
And Nuku Ora is coming to brief you in a few weeks' time on some regional issues.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll wait for that one on there. I'm going to open for comments. Anybody want to add any additional comments? No? Cool. So I'm going to shut it off. I'm going to have the last word. I know that, first of all, as I mentioned before, this is an unusual circumstance in that we unlike normal annual plans, we would have gone to the community for discussion. The baseline is what had been agreed to in the LTP process in terms of what's been suggested for the annual plan, notwithstanding some changes because of legislation like the RMA that has come into space. The same debate that we have is always an important one, but it never really gets resolved because it's always going to be something with the tension between equity for those who are finding it tough within Porirua and the role of local government, our council, to fund that so that we can continue to operate those services and provide those services. That's where the tension lies. Is it between direct pays, user pays, or is it between the ratepayer? A tension that the current government has taken a different approach. I'll leave it there for there. Crucially, as part of this process going forward, and part of it will be assisted by councillors asking the Mayor for additional information in the lead up to it, is a responsibility by officers to show the working. I was reflecting on this with regards to the line of questioning around dog control fees. If other organisations are have relatively lower fees, it would be important for us to be clear as to why that is the case. And that relies on officers to actually show the working. So that's a bit of a challenge. I went all back to officers on that. Let's leave it there. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Abstentions? Carried. We've got 2 more items to go. 7.5, dissolution of deed related to Joint Works wastewater treatment plant. I'll move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lawler, thank you very much. Can we have officers to speak on this one, please?
So
it is pretty straightforward.
It's pretty straightforward. The assets are transferring to Te Aki Wise, so we're actually going to lose direct governance and control over the asset. There are a few tricky things for us to work through with Wellington City Council. We need a little bit of clarity on the land up there. There's large parcels of land up there. So we're already engaged with Wellington City Council officers on that, but we think it's pretty clear that things are changing and our governance and legal structure needs to reflect what's happening.
Does anybody have any questions on this one? Comments? Okay, I'm going to give the final word on this before we go to vote. Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, just one further comment, Mr. Chair. This is just the wastewater treatment plant. This is not the landfill. So a couple of the Wellington people talked about the landfill deed. We are again engaged with Wellington City Council officers on that. They have a draft terms of reference that they're providing us feedback on, and we hope to come back to you in the middle of the year with the way forward for the landfill, which is an entirely different issue than this one.
Thank you for that clarity. I'm going to go to the final word before we go to vote. I think one of the things that was illustrated in an earlier agenda item is our need to try and be as forthright and engaging with our colleagues to the south, notwithstanding whatever Kōrero is about amalgamation. So that it is entirely appropriate that we are working with Wellington City before it comes to the governance board for sign-off. Let's leave it there at that for now. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Right, we got a motion to go into public excluded. I'm going to give it to Leggett this time, Councillor Leggett. And so all those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. So members, yes. Unfortunately not. But there is a lovely side room, and I'm sure that there is somebody out there who will be able to give you water or some other nice libation in the meantime.